Water Affairs of the Netherlands, Mr. Henk Owen. After that, as mentioned, we will hopefully have time for some interventions and questions from the floor. So we the event with some remarks of our Undersecretary General for Economic and Social Affairs, Mr. Eugene. So now, without further ado, I would like to give the floor to the German representative of the Republic of Tajikistan, to the United Nations, His Excellency Mr. Mohammed, who will moderate the first segment. Ambassador, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Nicholas, and good morning, dear colleagues, excellencies, and distinguished colleagues. On behalf of the let me welcome and cordially greet all of you virtually and express our appreciation for your participation in today's event. It is a great honor for me to moderate the first part of the meeting. As you will remember, this high-level event was planned for 23rd March on occasion of International Water Day, with participation of high-level dignitaries. But due to the COVID-19 pandemic, it was postponed. Dear colleagues, despite all current difficulties today, we will have an opportunity to discuss the role of WASH in addressing the COVID-19 sanitary crisis and interlinkages between water and climate change in the context of water resource management as a key factor in climate adaptation and mitigation. The current pandemic imposes extraordinary pressures on water and sanitation system around the globe. Widespread call for hand washing involves the increase of using fresh water. When it comes to hygiene, such a vital resource as water becomes even more important. Colleagues, access to water and sanitation is a key determinant of health, a prerequisite for hygiene, and a key pillar in preventing and combating any disease transmission. Therefore, water is a fundamental element that helps the world in regions, as you know, to restore its capacities for mastering the current crisis and its consequences, and to be more resilient when facing the crisis. Dear colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, we would like to welcome your ideas, suggestions, or plans on how to effectively use our collective approach to advance SDG 6 and to accelerate the adoption of integrated water and sanitation solutions towards achieving the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development within the framework of ongoing Water Action Decade. Colleagues, dear brothers and sisters, now without further ado, I have the honor to give the floor to His Excellency Mr. Sirajuddin Mohammed, Minister of Foreign Affairs of the Republic of Tajikistan. Excellency, you have the floor.
Hello. Hello. Hello.
Yes, we hear you, Mr. Minister.
Hello. Hello.
Participants, at the outset, I would like to extend our appreciation to the missions of Canada, Finland, Hungary, Japan, Kenya, the Netherlands, Portugal, Singapore, and Uzbekistan to the United Nations, as well as the UNESCO and Rainwater organization of today's important event. Fresh water, food, and environment, as well sanitation and hygiene are essential to address and to prevent the spread of COVID-19. Meeting the water needs of a growing population, contributing to public health in the wake of the COVID-19 sanitary crisis, dealing with water-intensive consumption patterns and water pollution are key factors undermining the achievements of poverty eradication and sustainable development. Water is a powerful tool for cooperation and dialogue in support of sustainable development and safer societies. However, there is a need for more efficient, integrated and coordinated actions coupled with stronger political will. All stakeholders must be engaged actively, paying special attention to the livelihoods of poor and vulnerable people, leaving no one behind. Equally important are forward-thinking and a strong will to promote innovative approach to local, national, regional and international water cooperation in the aftermath of the COVID-19 sanitary crisis. Dear participants, we believe that open discussions of the issues shaping our water resources, like today's event, can stimulate cooperative and transformative solutions and actions. The government of Tajikistan, as a part of its international commitments and contributions, will continue providing a platform for policy dialogue, partnership and action, and organizing with the support of the United Nations and other partners high-level international conferences throughout the Water Action Decade, thus promoting the Dushanbe water process. Unfortunately, due to the COVID-19 pandemic, the organizing committee of a second high-level international conference on the International Decade for Action, Water for Sustainable Development 2018-2028 decided to postpone it to later dates. Availing this opportunity, I would like to inform that long-term observations of our experts testified to the increasing impact of climate change on the environment, social and economic situation in Tajikistan and Central Asia. Day after day, the negative impact of climate change on the quality and quantity of fresh water resources is becoming increasingly evident. In Tajikistan, over the past decades, there has been recorded a significant reduction of the glaciers, which are vital for the entire Central Asia. Recognizing water resources as the main component of sustainable development, we are concerned with the changes in hydrological cycles that adversely affect water, energy and food security and can lead to additional risk of floods and severe droughts. The countries of our region have to revise their program and strategies for water use, especially in agriculture, and take joint measures to promote sustainable development and adaptation to climate change. This year, Tajikistan has started chairing the International Fund for Saving the Aral Sea. During our chairmanship, we will continue efforts in strengthening dialogue and cooperation to address water problems related to climate change as well as reforming the fund. In conclusion, I would like to underline that progress is possible when countries and regions commit to prioritizing the water, sanitation and climate challenges. This is Particularly true in the case of water share among different sectors, as well as surface and groundwater shared among communities and countries. Integrated approach and concerted actions at all levels are long-term and complex process which can only happen with strong leadership and arrangement on the overall objectives. Thank you for your attention.
I thank the Minister of Foreign Affairs of the Republic of Tajikistan for his statement. And now I have the honor to give the floor to the Honorable Karina Goll, Canada's Minister of International Development. Excellency, you have the floor.
Thank you, Ambassador, for giving me the floor and for co-hosting this important event. Excellencies, colleagues, COVID-19 has shown us clearly that access to water is a matter of life and death. Not just because we need clean drinking water to live, but also because water, sanitation, and hygiene are critical to stopping the spread of diseases. We saw it with Ebola, and we are now seeing it today with COVID-19. Washing our hands with soap and water, in addition to physical distancing, is one of the key measures for keeping COVID at bay. Yet in developing countries, only 27% of all people have access to clean water and soap. Greater access to clean water, sanitation, and hygiene could help prevent 6% of deaths worldwide. With the current crisis, while the current crisis has brought the importance of water into stark relief, it is also key to the climate action needed to pull us back from destroying the planet. Water is critical to climate change adaptation and sustainable food systems, and is the basis for achieving climate resilience. For example, as we have seen in the Sahel, when climate change leads to lack of water, populations are vulnerable and regional security threats are amplified. Displaced people and refugees are among the most vulnerable to these threats and to COVID-19. Canada's Feminist International Assistance Policy recognizes that water, sanitation, and hygiene are critical to achieving and maintaining development gains in health, education, and humanitarian assistance, and gender equality. That is why Canada is supporting humanitarian partners such as UNICEF, UNHCR, and ICRC for WASH activities around the world. They are working to build hand-washing facilities and distribute hygiene kits to hospitals, clinics, women's centers, and schools that are urgently needed to help fight transmission of the virus and construct or repair water and sanitation facilities. A practical example of this is that at any given moment, at least 300 million women and adolescent girls around the world are menstruating, often without access to water and sanitation. When we help to get water, sanitation, and hygiene services to them, we improve their health and help them to manage menstruation with dignity. Canada is also working with a range of partners to explore how we can improve watershed management, ecosystems protection, and climate action. Canada is providing $230 million over 4 years to the Global Environment Facility to support global environmental initiatives, including to improve the management of marine and freshwater resources. Canada is also exploring how it can support ecosystems and watersheds through the use of nature-based climate solutions. For example, Canada is investing $2.5 million on the Ocean Risk and Resilience Alliance to develop innovative financing that drive greater private investment in natural infrastructure such as coral reefs and mangroves. This innovative partnership with ORA is one of several ways in which Canada is supporting developing countries in their efforts to build low carbon and climate resilient economies through our 5-year, $2.65 billion climate finance commitment. Canada and Mexico are also co-leading the Nature-Based Solutions Action Track under the Global Commission on Adaptation. We look forward to showcasing examples of nature-based solutions at global events, including the Climate Adaptation Summit in January 2021 and the Climate COP26 later that year. Access to water is crucial for peace and security. Increasing pressures on water resources are already contributing to conflict in many parts of the world, and water insecurity will be further exacerbated by climate change. These challenges are most keenly felt in regions that are already struggling with poverty, social tensions, environmental degradation, and fragile political institutions. Canada believes that the UNSC must take urgent action on climate change and its effects on essential life-giving resources such as water. And this is why addressing the security risks posed by climate change is one of Canada's 5 priorities if elected to the UN Security Council for the term 2021-2022. As a member of the Security Council, Canada will continue to consistently raise climate change as a fundamental issue affecting global peace and security. Our discussions today are all the more urgent, given the importance of charting a strong way forward on climate change and sustainable development issues. And just like how climate change and its effects are now part of the considerations of the United Nations as a driver of conflict, so too must economic security be. Economic security and the sustainable and predictable funding of the SDGs is at the core of the crisis we face today with the COVID pandemic, which is not just about lives, but also about livelihoods. Canada is keen to ensure that COVID-19 recovery efforts around the world should support global climate and sustainability objectives. Yesterday, Prime Minister Trudeau talked about sustainability at an event co-convened by Canada, Jamaica, and the UN Secretary General called Financing for Development in the Era of COVID-19 and Beyond. At this event, heads of state agreed on several important elements for recovery, including that recovery efforts should focus on rebuilding a more resilient and inclusive world. And that includes shining a light on the importance of access to clean water and the impacts of climate change. To solve global problems, we must work together, and Canada can be counted on to do its part to make sure that the world after COVID sees a system that balances meeting the needs of big and small countries with sustainability of the planet. I would like to conclude by thanking the governments of Tajikistan, Kenya, Japan, Finland, the Netherlands, Portugal, Singapore, and Hungary for having convened today's meeting alongside Canada. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Karen, for your statement and for joining us this morning and for your comprehensive vision on issues of our agenda. And now I have the honor to give the floor to Her Excellency Ms. Sigrid Kaag, Minister for Foreign Trade and Development Cooperation of Netherlands. Distinguished Minister, you have the floor. Madam Minister, are you here? Then let's. Hello. And let's watch the video message from Her Excellency Ms. Krista McConnell, Minister of Environment and Climate Change of Finland. Colleagues, thank you.
Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, I wish to thank you for the opportunity to participate in this event on accelerating implementation of the 2030 Agenda through water, sanitation, and climate action. Despite many positive outcomes in implementing the 2030 Sustainable Development Goal 6 on clean water and sanitation by 2030. The importance of the SDG 6 has become even more evident with the current pandemic. We can see clearly in the inequalities in access to water and sanitation. Washing your hands sounds like a simple thing to do. However, 3 billion people worldwide do not have basic hand washing facilities at home. 1 in 6 healthcare facilities globally lack adequate hand hygiene facilities. We need to ask ourselves why so many people are being left behind. The current COVID-19 crisis is disproportionately affecting women, girls, and others in marginalized and vulnerable positions. The 2030 Agenda has great potential to address the existing gender gaps and discrimination faced by many people in getting access to clean and safe water and sanitation. The impacts of climate change amplify the existing gender inequalities. This is why we need to empower women and girls. We need to support them in the critical role they can play in fighting and adapting to climate change and in improving water management. Water and its management play a key role in our ability to adapt to climate change. The interlinkages between water and climate change are strong. Without urgent climate action, we will not reach the goals of SDG 13 on climate, but neither will we reach the goals of the SDG 6. The urgency of climate action is something we must not forget despite the current global pandemic. Dear colleagues, access to safe water and adequate and equitable sanitation requires all levels of society to work together. At the same time, we need to enhance our regional and international cooperation. In Finland, we have seen that comprehensive water governance and transboundary cooperation are key elements of good water management. Dear listeners, it is essential for us to work together to fully achieve the rights to water and sanitation, not only as a response to the current situation, but also to build future resilience. At the end of the day, the question of water is quite simple. It is a matter of life and death. That is why water is priceless. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, I wish you a successful event.
I thank Her Excellency Ms. Krista Makkonen, Minister of Environment and Climate Change of Finland, for her video message and for her meaningful views. Colleagues, Excellencies, please mute your microphones in order to have more precise conversation. And now we will go back to Secretary, Madam Minister. Are you ready? Madam Minister. Okay, Excellencies, now I have the honor to request you to see the video message from His Excellency Mr. João Pedro Matas Fernandes, Minister of Environment and Climate Action of Portugal.
Good morning to you all. It is a pleasure to be with you today to address a theme to which Portugal always devoted special attention. With this unprecedented crisis, a theme which proves to be once more at the center of our lives. The COVID-19 crisis highlighted, as clear as ever, the complex link between health, access to safe water, and hygiene. More than ever, the Agenda 2030 must be at the centerpiece for our responses, and we cannot allow our commitment on international targets towards sustainable development and climate resilience to be sidetracked due to the emergency reprioritization. We need to focus on a green recovery, and we need to mobilize all our efforts to build a stronger and resilient common future. Although the focus is still on fighting the pandemic and its immediate consequences, we must start rebuilding our societies and recovering our economies. This crisis demonstrated that cooperation between states around the world is more important than ever. Coordinated and articulated efforts are essential to overcome this big humanity challenge. On the other hand, we must be conscious that this crisis did not affect everyone in the same manner. Water and sanitation related inequalities, particularly for the more vulnerable population, resulted in different risk levels. Improving access to safe drinking water and sanitation services around the world, along with improving water governance and sustainable financing instruments, become even more urgent and decisive in our global response. Climate change will exacerbate these inequalities, and it will have relevant impacts on water resources. Sea level rise, changes in temperature and precipitation affect water availability and quality, and conditioning all water uses and, in some cases, like in Portugal, result in a more frequent episode of water scarcity and drought, and in more damaging and frequent water-related natural disasters. Portugal has been very active and well succeeded in the fight against climate change. We have assumed the goal of carbon neutrality by 2050. Adopt a roadmap for carbon neutrality for 2050, and we assume the ambitious targets for 2030 in our national plan for energy and climate. By 2030, we expect to reduce 55% of our greenhouse gas emissions with respect to 2005. Reduce 35% of our primary energy consumption, and we believe we can increase to 47% the weight of renewable energies in final energy consumption. We are aware that despite all these mitigation efforts, the impacts are already here and will remain. Therefore, adaptation must be a top priority. Conscious of the challenges, Portugal adopted its first national adaptation strategy on 2010. The strategy was revised on 2015, and now we have a national adaptation plan for 2030, aiming at implementation of concrete measures and monitoring its effectiveness. In the last years, through the Environmental Fund, we were able to support several adaptation projects, mainly at local level, with a concrete impact, improving the relation between urban areas and water resources, mainly through nature-based solutions. It was also possible to fund projects which reduced the impact of forest fires on water resources and contributed to improve the resilience to the impacts of climate change. Our experience shows strong benefits from managing water and climate change challenges in an integrated manner. In the same time, an integrated vision of the complete hydrological cycle is also fundamental, what we call a one water approach. It's our firm conviction that more reflection is needed on how to strengthen the dialogue between the freshwater and saltwater communities. For that reason, we are organizing a high-level symposium on water, bridging SDG 6 and SDG 14, to be held in Lisbon during the second UN Ocean Conference. Unfortunately, we had to postpone both events, which will take place in parallel. Despite this postponement, our commitment to host the UN Ocean Conference in close cooperation with our co-host Kenya, as well to organize a high-level symposium, remains unwavering. Such events are key to push for concrete action, in line with the goals of the Water Action Decade, as well as to keep these themes at the top of the political international agenda. Count on Portugal to continue pushing forward the 2030 Agenda and its 17 goals, as well as to contribute to the international reflection that will precede the UN Water Conference in 2023. I wish you all to have a fruitful meeting and look forward to its outcomes. Goodbye.
I thank distinguished Minister for his very valuable observation. And can we go back to distinguished Minister from Netherlands?
Mohammed, this is Carl speaking. The minister just had to leave and she asked me to make some points on her behalf. She really regretted that she had to go to a cabinet meeting. First of all, she asked me to thank you so much for organizing this very important event. Because, of course, at this moment, we are all focusing on eradicating the virus. But let's not forget that this COVID crisis is in addition of problems which are already in place on health, on economy, all the other poverty in the world. And these are challenges without a passport. They are transboundary. And in many of these challenges we face, water is at the center. There's either too much water or not enough water, or the water we face is too dirty. And that provides with interconnected challenges we can only solve with interconnected solutions. And of course, we had a discussion already in 2015 that the way to address these interconnected challenges is the SDG agenda, Agenda 2030. And the other key solution we already worked on 2 years ago is, of course, the Paris Agreement on countering climate change. So when the current Secretary General says we have to recover better, it means in our very strong view that we have to work both on implementation of Agenda 2030 and implementation of the climate change agenda. The 1.5 degree world must not be a pipe dream because it would set us back decades. And together, certainly in line with ambitious nationally determined contributions, we must invest in the green economy and use support to the most vulnerable communities. This crisis can actually help prepare us for the next crisis. And if we have real water and sanitation in place, we are convinced that when there's a new pandemic, we will be much better prepared. To achieve this, we need bold and intelligent solutions. We need to create new green business opportunities. And we need to achieve these through transparent, participatory and accountable community-driven solutions with key involvement of both the private sector and NGOs. We need to put our money where our future is. And what my minister really asked me also to convey the message to this distinguished group of colleagues, that's the way we can truly use this decade to achieve our collective goals as defined by the SDGs and the Paris Agreement on climate change. And once again, thanks so much to Tajikistan, to the minister, to the president, and certainly to you personally, my dear friend, Mohammed, for your personal leadership on this one. Thank you.
Thank you, Karel. Thank you, brother, for your always very useful observations. And now I have the honor and privilege to invite the Ambassador of Hungary, my dear sister, Katalin Bogai, to have the floor. Katalin?
Yes, I hear you, but can you see me?
Yes, I do. Yes, I do.
Yeah, it seems to be a problem on my screen. I don't know what is it. Something happened.
I hear you, Kathleen.
Yeah,
Now we see you.
Okay, now I'm back, I think. Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
You
can hear me. Okay, good morning and good afternoon wherever we are in the world. My dear brother, it's always wonderful to see you. Whenever we speak about water, we speak together with all my colleagues here in New York. And although we are all together like 800 participants, but I would like to say that this is really still a family gathering because we are committed and we really believe in the importance of our existence and participation in this very important matter. I would like to start with the outcome of the Budapest Water Forum entitled Budapest Appeal, which highlighted that water is not only the source of life, it is an opportunity and our responsibility. Without good water management, all investments in fighting poverty, improving health, education, ensuring development and prosperity, protecting our planet and its ecosystems will be in vain. Ladies and gentlemen, first of all, I would like to thank our partners, the Netherlands, Finland, Portugal, Japan, Kenya, Singapore, and Canada to organize this event together. Just during these very important times, during COVID, we just all know how important it is what we are talking about. As extreme climate trends continue to evolve even in these difficult times, the climate security nexus has more increased relevance than ever, in particular in the most climate vulnerable parts of the world. According to the Hungarian approach, our activities are the most effective when they are based on the principle of local assistance. In other words, help must be taken where the need arises. We believe that climate finance and international development cooperation instruments are essential tools in this regard. Hungary recently adopted its international development cooperation strategy for the period 2020 and 2025, which places a marked emphasis on the need to increase our development assistance pertaining to SDG 6, providing adequate water and sanitation to those in need, therefore one of Hungary's key development priorities in the coming years. Ladies and gentlemen, we have launched several substantial development projects focusing on the provision of clean water and sanitation. In 2019, for example, Hungary initiated the Comprehensive Development Program in Uganda, within the framework of which the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Trade, in partnership with the Hungarian private sectors, in providing 3 rural schools located near the Rwanda refugee settlement, access to clean water. Clean water and adequate sanitation is vital to combating the spread of viruses and infections such as COVID-19. Moreover, we know that we must just ensure that the negative economic effects of the pandemic don't deter important investments in the water and sanitation infrastructures of developing countries. And finally, just a word about the Hungarian Climate and Nature Conservation Action Plan, which is through which we aim to protect all our rivers from waste coming from outside of the borders. Waterborne waste coming into the country from outside Hungary borders as a result of environmentally irresponsible practices will not be allowed to further damage our natural treasures. And I know this is a very important issue for everybody. We remain committed to maintaining our active and leading role on the international level in the field of water management. Thank you very much.
Katalin, thank you very much for your statement and for meaningful views. And once again, very good to see you. And
Thank you very much, my dear. Thank you.
Now I have the honor to invite my very good friend, His Excellency Ishikana Kimihira, Permanent Representative of Japan. Ishikana, you have the floor.
Thank you very much. Good morning and good afternoon, good evening, everyone. Well, do you hear me?
Yes, we do.
Oh, that's good. Okay. Excellencies, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen. I would like to begin by thanking the co-organizers, the partners, and participants for making this event possible. As a long-standing partner and a top donor in the area of water and sanitation, Japan considers today's discussion timely and valuable from three fronts. The first point is from the realization that water and sanitation are key elements of achieving human security embodied in the SDGs to leave no one behind. And the second point is from the perspective that safe water and sanitation systems is indispensable in the global efforts to achieve universal health coverage, as committed by leaders at the General Assembly high-level meeting on UHC on 23rd September 2019. The third point is on water-related disaster. 90% of global disasters are water-related. 40% of the world's people are affected by water scarcity, and increased incidents of flooding threaten to destroy water and sanitation facilities and contaminate water sources. We also need to scale up water and sanitation services as part of our fight against COVID-19. At the same time, even as we fight COVID-19, we must not neglect to improve our preparedness and resilience to water-related natural disasters around the world and to ensure that we build back better. Above all, ensuring equitable access to basic services such as water and sanitation is also a key to preventing violence and conflict, which can contribute to peace building and sustaining peace. Well, using this opportunity, I would like to update on the 4th Asia-Pacific Water Summit, originally scheduled to be held in October 2020 in Kumamoto, Japan. This summit is to follow the 3rd Asia-Pacific Water Summit in Myanmar in 2017 as an important occasion where the heads of state and government from Asia and the Pacific can gather together to discuss how to resolve a variety of water-related issues, such as water and sanitation, and water-related disasters in the region. However, taking into consideration the current circumstances, Japan has decided to postpone the summit for a year. The new date and further information will be communicated to you following consultation with the relevant parties. We look forward to your high-level participation and collaboration to discuss our post-corona lessons and ways to achieve the water-related SDGs next year. Also, as an update on upcoming opportunities, Japan is currently considering a water-related side event at the time of the HLPF in July. Our idea is to organize an opportunity to exchange views and ideas on how we can improve resilience to better mitigate water-related disasters and further collaboration.
I thank distinguished Ambassador Ishikanev you for your statement and for your very insightful vision. And now I have the honor to give the floor to His Excellency Lazarus Amaya, Permanent Representative of Kenya. Lazarus, you have the floor, brother.
Thank you very much, my brother, for convening and, of course, moderating this session. Excellencies, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. Kenya is indeed proud to co-host this morning's meeting, which provides us with a unique opportunity to discuss important water-related issues. I thank the previous speakers for their insightful remarks and wish to add Kenya's perspective on the issue. As has been stated by previous speakers, the world is on the verge of depleting some of our freshwater resources. This has been accelerated by increasing drought and desertification, as well as poor water supply and water ecosystem management. At the rate at which we are going, it is projected that by 2050, at least 1 in 4 people will be affected by recurring shortages. That is why, first of all, in co-host UN Ocean Conference to pursue the agenda of conservation and sustainable use of the ocean and ocean resources. The global community, we continue to recognize that clean water and sanitation are an important contribution towards our sustainable development goals. Clean water and sanitation are both critical survival of life and ecosystems, eradication of poverty and diseases, as well as the achievement of universal health coverage, food security, and nutrition, among others. It is undeniable that weak water and sanitation systems will only further aggravate the impact of COVID-19 crisis. We also acknowledge that many countries in the tropical world, in the islands, Pacific, the Atlantic, and the Indian Ocean are bearing the brunt of climate variability and change. Climate change continues to be an important factor, and that is why Kenya has seen it, and that even included it in our UN security campaign because of the link between climate change and insecurity. And in this regard, we are looking forward to the Ocean Conference that will help the world community to give it more special attention. Equally important is the fact that we require water for everything to sustain life. It is water that has the power to give us the catalyst even for energy and transport. And this growth accelerator can only be leveraged if our water security and resilience is strong. That is why it is essential for us to collectively harness technology, innovation, and science towards the identification of sustainable solutions. As I conclude, I re-emphasize that we must continue shifting the conversation towards innovation and science in order for us to rightfully reap the benefits of this essential resource while mitigating the effects of climate change on sanitation and water resources. I thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Lazarus, for your statement and for being with us today. And now I have the honor to invite His Excellency Mr. Burhan Gafur, Permanent Representative of Singapore. Burhan, you have the floor. Right?
Thank you very much, Mohammed Amin. Good morning, Excellencies, friends, and colleagues from around the world. First of all, I'd like to say that Singapore is very pleased to be one of the co-sponsors of this very important and meaningful event. And I'd like to thank in particular the very high-level participants, the ministers, and also members of civil society who are joining this conversation from around the world. The nexus between water, sanitation, and climate change has been addressed by the various speakers before me. And I'd like to touch on two different issues, or two separate issues. The first issue is the role of technology. And the second issue is the importance of price signals. Let me address them one at a time. First, with regard to technology, it is important that we harness technology to increase our access to water. The Honorable Minister from Canada, Karina Gould, she said that access to water is a question of life and death. And therefore, by enhancing access to water, we are actually enhancing opportunities to extend the livelihood, improve the life and livelihood of people around the world. And in the case of Singapore, I'd like to provide two examples of how we have harnessed technology to enhance access to water. One is in terms of desalination. Desalination, of course, is widely used around the world. And today, desalination provides 30% of Singapore's current water demand. But what is equally important is to be energy efficient when we employ desalination technologies, because the use of energy does have an impact on the carbon footprint. And so that is one of Singapore's priority at the moment, to increase the energy efficiency of our desalination plants. The second aspect of technology is recycling wastewater. At the moment, 40% of Singapore's water supply on a daily basis can be met from recycled water. And our goal is to increase these to as much as 60% by the year 2060. Again, recycling wastewater requires technology, which is not complicated, technology which is available, but technology which will require a lot of investment and working closely with the private sector. And that is a very important part of any strategy we adopt around the world, working with the private sector to find technological solutions in order to enhance access to water for our people. The second point that I had wanted to raise is the question of price signals. I think it was the Honorable Minister from Finland who said that water is priceless. Indeed, that is true, but water is not free. Access to water requires investments in infrastructure that cost money. Someone has to pay the bill. Of course, the government has to pay the bill, but government has so many priorities too, especially these days. So the point I'm making is that it is important to design price signals. And here I'd like to offer two examples from Singapore. First, in Singapore, we believe in pricing water correctly. Every household has to pay some fee for the usage of water. And the more they use their water, the more they pay. In other words, the pricing signal is designed to disincentivize wastage or overconsumption of water. And we think that is important, not only for households, but also for businesses who can often be big consumers of water, but also big wasters of water. The other thing about pricing signals is pricing carbon. Singapore is one of the few countries in Asia that has imposed a carbon tax with a view to accelerating carbon efficiency. Of course, processing water also requires energy, which in turn leaves a carbon footprint. Again, the carbon tax is intended to send a price signal to everyone in society, especially to industry, but also to individuals, that it is important to have a very light carbon footprint, even as we try and increase access to water, because ultimately there is a nexus between water, sanitation, and climate change. Thank you very much, Mohammed Amin, for organizing this meeting and for Tajikistan's leadership. And a good day to all friends from around the world. Thank you.
Thank you, Burhan. Thank you for your comprehensive vision on issues of our agenda. And thank you for being with Water Friends Group always together. And once again, I thank all co-organizers and distinguished ministers. And without further ado, I now turn over the meeting to the distinguished co-chair and moderator, His Excellency Mr. Hank Owen, Special Envoy for International Water Affairs, the Netherlands, and our very good friend to continue the event. Hank?
Thank you so much, Ambassador. Thank you so much, dear friends in New York. This is a very warm welcome from the Netherlands. Happy to take over the second part of this high-level event. Thanks so much, honorable guests, excellencies, for your contributions in the first round, raising the bar towards achieving the SDGs and putting SDG 6 at the heart of sustainable development, COVID relief, COVID response, and of course, climate action. And the second round, we try to deep dive a bit in the expertise, seeing this event definitely as a stepping stone towards the high-level event in 2021, the Dushanbe conference, of course, and we look forward to that, your ambassador and excellencies from Tajikistan, and the UN Water Conference in 2023, just reminding us all that the last time and the first time we had a UN conference like this was in 1977. So 46 years later, we will see such a high-level event. All stepping stones, of course, to achieve the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development with concise, comprehensive, inclusive action on SDG 6. I have the honor to chair a panel of experts, and I will introduce them quickly before I give the floor to the first. We have Mr. Gilbert Umbo. He is UN Water Chair and President of International Fund for Agricultural Development. Gilbert, welcome. Mr. Petteri Talas, Secretary General for the World Meteorological Organization. Petteri, very much welcome. We have Mrs. Maimouna Mohd Sharif, the Executive Director of UN Habitat and Mayor in Malaysia. Ms. Maimouna, very welcome to you. Ms. Shamila Nair Bedouel, Assistant Director General for Natural Science at UNESCO. Shamila, Ms. Shamila, Dr. Shamila, very welcome to this panel. And Mr. Maarten van Aalst, he's the Director of the Red Cross and Red Crescent Climate Center and Professor at the University of Twente on Climate Resiliency. Very welcome to you, Maarten. Mr. Peter Kovacs, the Vice Chair of the Bureau of the UNECE Water Convention, particularly important water crossing borders, immediately challenging our resiliency and sustainability and security. And last but definitely not least, Dr. Jerome Deli-Friscoli, the chair of the Global Water Partnership Technical Committee and part of a member of the high-level experts and leaders panel on water and disasters. Considering the time, I know we have short. The idea is to have short interventions first, then I'll ask the panelists one or two questions, and then we go to the interventions from representatives from countries, NGOs and others that asked for the floor. We only have 50 minutes left, so we have to speed up a little bit the time in the intervention, and we can only do this knowing that this is only a stepping stone towards the next. Gilbert, Mr. Hongwu, Chair of UN Water, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Henk. I'm very, very pleased to see you, distinguished ambassadors. First of all, I would like, on behalf of the UN Water, to thank all the member states that have organized this discussion today. We know even before the COVID-19, the global demand for water, the global demand itself was rising. Water resources becoming more and more polluted, and the health and livelihood of poor rural people were the hardest hit. Particularly coming from IFAD, from the agricultural perspective, we all know that 70% of the fresh water usage is from the ag, and that usage is also increasing. When we enter the new year 2020, i.e. before the crisis itself, the COVID crisis, the objective of achieving the SDG 6, water and sanitation for all, was already off track. It's important to keep that in mind. And now the pandemic has clearly revealed the result of what I will call the chronic underfunding in water management related matters. In the current pandemic management, we all know and do agree that the first line of defense against the coronavirus is washing with safe water and soap. Yet, this protection is not available for 3 billion people who cannot have access to save water. The question now is the action. I'm thinking here about the call of the Secretary General, the call for action. And one of the things where I would like to spend my few minutes on, one of the actions that the UN Water has been working on is the creating the momentum for the global acceleration framework for SDG 6. And together with our 41 partners, 32 UN agencies and 41 partners, we have been working on this acceleration framework. And this framework, which will be officially launched in July during the high-level political forum, with the great support of our colleague from the UN DESA, the framework focuses on 5 key thematics. 1 is the financing, 2 is the data and information, 3, the capacity development, and the innovation as the number 4. Finally, the governance of water-related matters. And we shall also agree that the countries, the member states, must drive the advance toward the water and sanitation targets. So to this end, what the UN Water has also been doing is piloting our offer to the UN country teams and the resident coordinators in supporting the UN development system on the ground. This enables water and sanitation expertise across the UN system and beyond, so to make sure that we bridge the gap between the different agencies and the country level. So far, the requests that we have been receiving have focused on building a successful response to the COVID-19, as well as the climate resilience. I'm sure my colleagues that you mentioned, WMO, UN Habitat, UNESCO, and colleagues will speak directly. Let me just end quickly by reminding all of us that the World Toilet Day this year is climate and sanitation. We want to use the November 19th day to focus attention on sanitation and hygiene and how climate change is impacting our new, this new normal. So, ladies and gentlemen, I'm looking for a vivid and dynamic dialogue today. Thank you so much, Henk.
Thank you so much, Gilbert Humbo. Thank you so much for your words. I think this is critically important, having the accelerator framework ready, focusing on the 5 key issues that help drive water action to reach sustainable development, to inform climate action, and to connect SDG 6 to all the other SDGs. Water is life, former Secretary General Ban Ki-moon always said, and it's without water that we see life fall apart. So water security is security for all, and it's critically important to drive that action. Thanks so much for your contribution and to the work with UN Water. And we look forward to launching the framework at HLPF in July, and then bring this to practice to accelerate our work in achieving our goals. Now the honor is for Petteri Tala, Secretary General of the World Meteorological Organization. Petteri, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Henk, and thanks, Excellencies and Minister, for this event. I think it's a great event, and WMO is happy to contribute. And I would like to show a few slides. If I could get the next one, please. So we are, WMO is UN Specialized Agency on Weather, Climate and Water, and we're very much science-based organization, and we're dealing with observing systems, services, and also climate science. Can I get the next one? So we have seen a growing amount of disasters in the past 20 years, and especially we have seen increase in the amount of flooding events and storm events, and this is partly because of climate change. Next, please. And most of the disasters that we are dealing with, they are related to water. We have had in the past 10 years 2 billion people who have been exposed to flooding problems, and we have had 1.5 billion people who have been exposed to drought problems. So they are the major disasters that are having impact on human well-being. Next, please. And besides these flooding and drought events, we have also difficulties with water quality. And if you look at this map, you can see that especially Africa and some South Asian countries are heavily exposed to this problem. Next, please. And during the past 5 years, we have seen difficulties with the drought. It's all the brown colors on this map. So regions where we have seen drought problems, and you can see it happening in all of the continents: Europe, Southern and Western Africa, Eastern Australia, in Amazonia region, and also in North America. And some parts of the world have been suffering because of excess rainfall amounts, especially Central Asia is one of those regions. Next, please. And World FAO has demonstrated that we have seen increasing amount of hunger. In the past 5 years, we have seen 36 million people more who are suffering from hunger, and I'm sure that this COVID crisis will make it even worse. And this development in the past 5 years is very much related to enhanced amount of drought, especially in Africa. Next, please. And if you look at the current map where water stress is already today, the problem, all these reddish colors indicate that we have a large amount of world where this is already a big problem, and Mediterranean region, Southern Asia, and several parts of Africa, and also Central America and the western part of North America have been exposed to those problems. Next, please. And I would like to raise also another problem here besides water. We have also difficulties with population growth, and here these colored areas, especially Africa and southern part of Asia, we have combined problem related to population growth and water availability. Next, please. If you look at the climate scenarios, what may happen by the end of this century, all these reddish and orange colors indicate areas where we expect to see difficulties with water availability, and you can see both Americas, Europe, North Africa, South Africa, and some Middle East countries are the worst areas in that respect. Next, please. If you look at countries, what kind of how they are prepared to face these problems, flooding and drought problems, we have two-thirds of the countries worldwide who will have proper flood warning systems, and we have more than half of the global countries who don't have proper drought warning systems. Next, please. Finally, we have decided to create a coalition which is working for a Sustainable Development Goal 6 accelerator, and we have at the moment 10 UN agencies who are committed to work for this, and we will launch this initiative next year, and there are also several donor countries and several finance partners who are interested in supporting this, and we are interested in enhancing the global observing systems, the services, climate preparedness and adaptation, and many of the partners will bring important components on board. My final slide is here. So what WMO is doing, we are very much transferring know-how from the advanced countries to less developed countries. We are supposed to enhance the availability of water data and also monitoring systems, and finally build services and evaluate the risks. So that's what's supposed to happen, and we are very grateful for the chair of UN Water for the support, and many partners of Ecosystem for the fact that we have decided to join this scheme. Thank you, Henk.
Thank you very much, Petri. I think you again showed us the insight in what the devastating impact of water is in the context of climate, of security, being it food, hunger, now health and a pandemic. And the challenges are only increasing. With that, the impact is also increasing: population growth, higher water demand. And as you say, rightly say, preparedness pays. But for preparedness, we need empowerment, we need data, and we need to monitor, we need to evaluate the risks. And like the high-level panel on water said, first comes our understanding. If we know better, then we can value water across the SDGs, and then we can manage it inclusively. So thanks so much, Petteri, for putting your partnership here also front and center, and in this coalition for the SDG 6 accelerator, and the collaboration with you on water. Thanks so much for that partnership and your knowledge and capacity. Then I go to Maimouna Mohd Sharif, the Executive Director of UN Habitat. Maimouna, thank you so much for joining. We all know it comes together in the city as a social system, but not only as a social system, also a system where climate and water are critically linked. And now with the pandemic, you see both the challenges pile up, but also the opportunity to intervene, to bring relief and speed up recovery in a sustainable way. Maimouna, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Excellencies, Honorable Ministers, ladies and gentlemen. I hope you can hear me well. I'm very grateful to the member states and organizer of the event for the invitations. I will start highlighting the intricate link between the SDG 11 and the other SDGs, including SDG 6, water and sanitation, and SDG 13, climate action, as you mentioned, moderator. As you see, you are aware, 3/4 of the global population live in the areas, in urban areas by 2050, and creating an unprecedented pressure on city and public service provider, especially water and sanitation. And more than 1 billion people live in slum and informal settlement characterized by poor housing and inadequate access to basic services such as water and sanitation. And we can see now the impact of COVID-19 to this vulnerable informal settlement and with poor housing and water and sanitation. And UN Habitat is at front supporting the local authorities, city leaders, and water and sanitation service provider and other urban settlement to provide sustainable services. And UN Habitat Global Water Operators Partnership Alliance actually has for the past 10 years has been helping to strengthen public water and sanitation utilities. So our alliance is the flagship network and peer-to-peer support between water operators across the region. And UN Habitat also for the past 20 years has been working very hard towards upgrading the housing and living condition of slum dwellers worldwide. Improvement to water and sanitation sectors, technology transfer, as our colleague, the ambassadors, Excellency ambassadors mentioned from Singapore, to enable sustainable material usage, provision of better infrastructure, and enabling access to basic urban services are among the top priorities for upgrading the living condition of the urban poor. Excuse me. The large majority of urban dwellers living in inadequate housing on floodplain and clinging to slope. High-rise impact to climate change. So by 2030, 600 million urban poor will be directly exposed to a climate change risk. So I think this, and especially during the COVID-19, we have seen more and more ever importance of strong system of delivery of inclusive and sustainable public and equitable public services such as water and sanitation in slum and informal settlement. So I'm happy to announce that we recently launched together with UNICEF a technical note on water, sanitation, and hygiene for COVID-19 response to slums and informal urban settlements. And this is very important support to the formal and informal WASH institution, including private and public sector, to address the water, sanitation, and hygiene needs and recognition for all the relevant institutions, including water and sanitation, municipality, small-scale informal service provider, as well as deliberate strategies to address the wash need of population in slum and informal urban settlement. So allow me to acknowledge the leadership provided by the UN Water in galvanizing members and partners to ensure that most up-to-date COVID-19 water and sanitation-related information, resources, and guidance are disseminated as they become available. So this is a very important decision. We need to call upon the decision makers at the national and local level, the solidarity, the unity to address the wash needs, water and sanitation, and help, especially in the slum dwellers and other vulnerable population. We must support our water and sanitation service providers to maximize access to services, especially in urban areas and particularly in slum and informal settlement. So I hope that we can work together and see our battle for sustainable development will be won or lost in cities. So we must build on inextricable link between SDG 6 and 11 to fully envision the sustainable development goal within this decade. And we would like to continue to see the high level interest in sharing an example through Global Water Alliance or GWOPA. Thank you very much for having me the chance to share, and we can get more during the discussion afterwards or question and answer. Over to you, Excellency. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Maimouna. Thank you so much for sharing the examples you and Habitat with your partners are actually putting on the ground for the people at risk most exposed now in the context of this pandemic. And we know that all these relief efforts from around the world in the places where the people are most vulnerable are critically important. And that these relief efforts can't stay to only be band-aid approaches, that we fix the current situation, but that they are actually stepping stones towards real sustainability, real resiliency in a comprehensive way for the 2030 agenda. SDG 6 can be an enabler for SDG 11 and SDG 13. But for getting that right, we need these type of partnerships, investments in light of the future and not in response to the past. Thank you so much. Then I go to Ms. Shamila Nair Bedouel, Assistant Director General for Natural Science at UNESCO. Ms. Shamila, the floor is yours.
Good afternoon to you, Special Envoy Hank. You can hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Thank you. I would like to thank all of you, Excellencies, UN Water Chair, Special Envoy, colleagues and guests. Thank you very much. UNESCO is really a privileged partner and member of the UN Water family, and we are indeed profoundly grateful for this invitation to be associated with this event. I would like to build upon the previous speakers and to impress upon you the role of education, culture, and science, especially in the time of this pandemic. No water, we cannot control the pandemic. So water is really the medium through which the societies are experiencing the most severe impact of the pandemic, but the most severe impacts of climate change. And this therefore makes water and climate change everyone's business. But we do need an open, interdisciplinary approach. And therefore, I'd like to share with you some avenues of catalytic intervention that we at UNESCO feel that we could bring on board this existing expertise of the UNESCO water family and 50 years of water governance. Now, 1975, all the countries across the world, your countries, established what is called this International Hydrological Program, which has evolved to an intergovernmental hydrological program. This program assists this intergovernmental hydrological program, is comprised of 193 member states, 169 IHP committees in 169 countries. This country-driven approach, as you mentioned, Henk, and all the other previous speakers and the excellencies this morning, the country-driven approach is so important to accelerate the implementation of the IHP, as well as the implementation of all the SDGs. We need to strengthen the science policy interface, and these national representatives, national committees, are responsible for the national water information systems. These platforms are very important to sharing knowledge and information on water governance. Now, one important message that I would like to share with you here today is a challenge to build the next generation of skilled water professionals, technicians, and higher education levels. How can we build these skills in a call for an integrated water management? Integrated water management with its 4 pillars of inclusivity, role for women, water being valorized both economically and socially, but also water as a finite resource. Therefore, we are responding to this by mobilizing 36 specialized water centers under UNESCO's mandate, as well as 60 UNESCO water chairs. This forms an incredible solidarity among scientists working in water and sharing with scientists across the world and water specialists to build the momentum for water management. Excellencies, every drop counts. We have seen this in this pandemic. How to raise awareness then on water efficiency and how to improve water efficiency. We have just heard from Maimuna in cities, we do face a challenge. Well, 40% loss occurs because of leakages. Well, how can we manage the available renewable water resources by taking care of these leakages that occur? Do we need more aggressive national policies? How to invest better in the water infrastructure? One other aspect that I would like to share with you, which we've seen in our programs across the world, is the access to water and sanitation in rural areas. They're not connected to the normal water supply. So if we want to accelerate the SDGs, how can we ensure affordable, low-cost technologies, simple autonomous household water systems, even rainwater harvesting, or perhaps the solar water disinfection technologies, the SODIS, which UNESCO is launching across the world as a low-cost, affordable technology. We need to improve innovation in STI. UNESCO is hosting a number of water youth platforms right now. Can we join together to enhance knowledge creation, learning, and partnerships so that the youth can share with us their innovative approaches? And one last matter that I would like to share with you is the role of gender and water in responding to integrated water management. Excellencies, when climate change impacts water resources and water-related services, it deprives people of the exercise of their right to safe drinking and sanitation. It will threaten livelihoods, particularly those most vulnerable, which is women, men, and children. So we need to advance gender equality and women empowerment to accelerate the achievement of the SDGs. Today, women and girls spend about 200 million hours a day still fetching water. Today, 25% of primary schools have no drinking water services, even more lack of sanitation facilities. How can we ensure education for all? So therefore, we need to ensure that norms and practices that prevent women in regions to participate and contribute to management of water decision-making are avoided. And for this, we have developed a number of different tools to enable countries to mainstream gender in shaping and implementing water policies. We need absolutely to ensure these tools are available to people across the world. My sister Maimuna talked about linking the SDGs. I would like to link SDG 5 and SDG 6, because when people have no access to water resources, they go thirsty. Without toilets and privacy, especially for girls, education for all cannot be achieved. And then concerning the governance, water connects life, as you said, Henk, water connects all aspects of the SDG. But water connects something very important, that is the past and the future, but water connects countries. So over 600 transboundary aquifers, 300 shared basins. We have an enormous potential at UNESCO where we are promoting transwater and transboundary cooperation. to manage the shared water based on scientific and technological knowledge to promote a peaceful world and a water secure world. And finally, I would like to thank you for inviting UNESCO. The pandemic has shown a unique solidarity among scientists across the world. We can apply this open science spirit to sharing access to water technologies. We need to continue the development of a UNESCO recommendation or a global universal recommendation on open science for shared water resources, shared water technologies. That is the accelerator. Access to water in itself is an accelerator for all the SDGs. Open science is a game changer, from taps to toilets. So thank you very much for giving us this opportunity, and we look forward to joining the journey of ensuring that water is available to everyone. Thank you, Henk, and thank you, Your Excellencies.
Thank you so much, Shamila, also for your passionate contribution and putting us with our feet literally on the ground, also in the face of the broader challenges of the 2030 agenda, where again, water can be the deal breaker if not understood right, science, if not managed right, in governance across borders, and if not valued right by culture, by education, and by people, starting with the young, the children. Water indeed helps us bridge gaps, but then we have to bring this understanding, this valuing, this management definitely on the ground. And that brings me in the context of what both you and Maimouna said in this COVID response, is that when first steps are relief, second steps are recovery. And then if we look at what we have on the shelf, and the recovery is so much focused on the economics, on jobs, 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 we have to prevent that we spend our dollars in the infrastructure projects that are on the shelf that are actually from the past. We have to think about this 2030 agenda as the framework for action and ensuring that that pipeline of sustainable investment and interventions ensures pathway forward. And who could talk better to this resiliency effort from an on-the-ground perspective in the context of climate and the pandemic than Maarten van Aalst, Director of the Red Cross and Red Crescent Climate Center. Maarten, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Henk, and thanks to the organizers also for putting together such an eminent panel. And it's really exciting, as you noted, to be linking the short term and the long term, the global and the local. And yeah, I'd like to start by saying that I think COVID really provides us an X-ray of our global vulnerability to shocks. And in that sense, also a real display of where we're at in terms of building a better world and achieving the SDGs. Our Red Cross and Red Crescent volunteers are indeed at the front lines. They're seeing these impacts everywhere. We just issued our revised appeal yesterday of 3.1 billion. And health, and especially also water and sanitation, are pillar one there. So we know exactly what this is about at those front lines. At those front lines, we're already seeing the links between that very urgent COVID response, all those things we need to do to keep the virus at, and the long-term challenges, because COVID is not coming by itself. The most challenging circumstances we're facing are compound risks with other often climate-related threats. We've seen several big storms already. It started with Fiji and Vanuatu, where we had to evacuate people while there was social distancing going on. Fortunately, not yet with many outbreaks. In the case of India and Bangladesh last week, we had a bit more time to prepare. By now, we have adjusted our contingency plans. So we do spread people out over more shelters with PPEs in place to prevent the spread of the disease. But for instance, in East Africa, we're now seeing COVID combining with locusts driving food insecurity, and then, of course, interacting, and of course, with the flooding, and then interacting in some places with conflict, posing where people are really the most vulnerable to that whole set of shocks. What's also proven critical is the ability to manage those shocks, the systems that we have in place, from that basic water supply, basic health systems, some cases social protection. And that's a critical role for local systems and local actors. Even us as humanitarians in this time of COVID show that we cannot just, fly our cowboys around the world doing the emergency response. What we rely on is this local capacity. And as I mentioned, in all of those efforts, water is critical. Many people already mentioned how do you wash hands without water? But it actually cuts across much wider. I mentioned storms and floods. We just issued this week guidance on heat waves. And even in my own country, the Netherlands, but all around the world, what is critical during heat waves is that especially the most vulnerable groups drink enough. What you need is available, good drinking water. And we know, again, the most vulnerable to heat waves are in those places where that's not available. So in the past years, especially on the water and sanitation side, we've been actually reaching tens of millions of people with emergency water and sanitation. But again, speaking of this X-ray, that is in a way where we're failing as a world to provide this in a more structural sense. And that's where I think we have an opportunity now to connect what we're seeing in the short term, that X-ray, to what we can do in the longer term. And the immense, I think it was $10 trillion of investment that is now being planned to recover from the economic shocks of COVID, also provide an unprecedented opportunity to create that longer term response and address several of these challenges at once and create not only a greener, not rebuilding that infrastructure that Henk just mentioned that might put us, into the jobs of 10 years ago, but create the jobs of 10 years hence, and do that in a way that also allows us to withstand the shocks that are rising in a better way in the future. The IFRC published a report at the time of the UN Climate Action Summit, The Cost of Doing Nothing, which projects a doubling of humanitarian aid in the negative climate scenarios. I'm also a coordinating lead author in the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change. And one of the most pressing issues we're trying to assess now for the report that will be coming out in 2 years is this question of those interconnected risks, the compound events coming together. And more of the evidence points to the fact that you need that local capacity, those basic systems. So we have a choice now. How do we rebuild those economies? Where do we create those jobs? And how do we build that resilience? And it's not rocket science. So I think this is my important message there as well. We can invest in that local capacity. We can invest in these social protection systems. We can invest in these early warning systems to deal with these water-related risks. We can invest in basic health. We can indeed invest in water and sanitation. It might be less easy to spend the hundreds of billions than the infrastructure project you might have on the shelf. But on the other hand, it's also something we know how to do. We just need to scale it up. So I think this will contribute to the SDGs. I think it will recover. It will help us that is beyond just the impacts of COVID, actually exposing vulnerabilities and inequality of societies at large. Of course, addressing that resilience collectively also is part of the bargain for Glasgow and will be part of all countries coming together also to meet the longer term needs on the greenhouse gas side and collectively building that greener world. But if we don't build resilience as part of that package, we're not going to get there too. So this investment addressing those weaknesses that we're now seeing in the X-ray, I think is also part of the successful package we need for Glasgow. So need to put your money where our future is was what Karel van Oostrom said on behalf of Minister Kaak. I think that is a great calling card. And I think we know where that future is and where that investment is needed. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Maarten. Again, reminding us that the next big thing will be a lot of small things, that it is not only about the trillions, but how to get to those trillions. And the second thing that is resonating through this panel is that investing in people is investing in infrastructure. So the millions needed to spend our billions right are critically important for an enabling environment, a just society, and the position of women and children and all in this concise, comprehensive and inclusive, sustainable way forward. We put our money not only where the future is, but where science tells us to go, but also where our hearts, our commitments told us so. 2030 is the agenda that we want to accomplish. Thank you very much from the on-the-ground report from around the world. Next is Peter Kovacs, the Vice Chair of the Bureau of UNEC Water Convention, talking to us on transboundary waters. Peter, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, dear colleagues. I representing the Water Convention, which is the unique global legal framework since 2016 after the global opening of our scope. Water Convention is an intergovernmental platform as well for a peaceful management of transboundary waters, which was already mentioned before. I think it's also a practical instrument for day-to-day cooperation for accelerating process towards the SDGs via the acceleration framework by the UN Water, which we are very welcome. I think the SDG target 6.5 is a real breakthrough as it's asking countries to implement integrated water resource management at all levels, including transboundary cooperation. The first reporting exercise of the SDG 6.5.2 is already shown that we still have a lot of effort to take because only 17 countries who has made the reporting counted that they have, let's say, operational arrangement on the water resources which are transboundary. The second reporting is already started, so the countries have a possibility to report by the end of June to repeat this exercise. Due to the COVID-19 pandemic, I think the safe and sufficient water and adequate sanitation and hygiene is really key for protect the human health and save lives. The Water Convention has a tool, a practical tool, the Protocol on Water and Health, which is jointly serviced by the UNECE and the WHO Europe. I think this tool can be used also during the recovery phase and beyond to prepare for a prevent possible future spread of similar infectious diseases. Frequent hand washing was already mentioned several times, and it's really true that the continuous supply of safe water and the adequate quality and quantity is necessary and is essential. And those systems has to be operational, including the challenging time as well, taking into account such a pandemic cases and also climate change and water scarcity issues. We cannot forget that the freshwater water resources, 60% is transboundary. So it's really important to have a discussion between the countries how to provide the sufficient quantity and quality of water. And I also agree what the colleague already mentioned, that we have to spend money also on those provisions which can be used for prevent such a diseases. And also maybe transboundary bodies like river commissions also can be, let's say, useful because they are more resilient to the political changes and other issues that can happen. For the effective climate change adaptation, I think also transboundary cooperation is one of the key. Water is really crucial, so that is the reason why the national determined contributions under the Paris Agreement also included, many of them, approximately 80%, included this as a key issue. I think we have also a lot of tools developed related with the climate change adaptation. For example, with the IMBO, with the International Basin Organization, we developed the guidelines, for example. And also the task force on the water, food, energy ecosystem nexus is really might be a useful tool to solve the problems not related with only the water, but related to the other cross-sectoral problems as well. I think these tools can be utilized later on. And as a conclusion, I would like to use also the pandemic just as an opportunity to highlight the importance of the water, the transboundary water cooperation, and also the importance of the integrated water resource management. And I think we have to provide sufficient funding for these activities as well in the future. I mentioned that the Water Convention became a global instrument. So we have several new countries joined. Senegal, Chad, and also Ghana is joining very soon. And we have more than 20 countries, let's say, looking for the accession to the Convention. I would like to encourage all the countries, international and non-governmental organizations to support and accelerate all the processes related with the peaceful and effective transboundary water cooperation. I think we need a global coalition of countries and organizations, and my country, Hungary, especially, really ready to act. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you so much, Peter, for your contributions from the slums in the cities, the vulnerable communities, all the way up to transboundary river systems. This panel touches upon everything, and it shows not only the massive vulnerability with climate, a pandemic, and other risks as all aggregated. It also shows the enormous opportunity we have. If we understand, value, and manage water and water-related systems, we're really seeing that water is this enabler, this leverage for sustainable development. Thank you for bringing your commitment. Also great to hear that the convention is gaining support among many more countries for just collaborative waterworks. Now, before I go to the last speaker of the panel, I have to give the floor to Mr. Eugene, United Nations Under-Secretary General for Economic and Social Affairs, because Mr. Liu has to leave for an urgent meeting. And he was willing to not only be with us, but also give us his remarks. Ideally final remarks, but we will take the discussion a little longer after Mr. Liu. I'll give the floor back to the panel with Jerome Deli-Priscoli. And then we have interventions coming from the floor. So stay with us. But because Mr. Liu Xinmin has to leave, I would really don't be in a situation to not giving the floor to Liu, being such a great partner in moving the 2030 agenda forward, and especially taking on SDG 6 towards next year's high-level event, the Dushanbe conference and the 2023 UN Water Conference. So Liu, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Hank. Excellencies, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for your participation in today's high-level event on accelerating implementation of the 2030 agenda through water, sanitation, and climate action. I commend the co-conveners for organizing this very timely discussion under the framework of the Water Action Decade. I thank the distinguished speakers and participants for their insightful messages and ideas. We have heard how crucial water, sanitation, and climate actions are to the achievement of the Sustainable Development Goals by 2030. Yet, we are aware that under the current rate of progress, the world is not on track to accomplish SDG 6 by 2030. Moreover, the impacts of climate change and the current COVID-19 crisis are exacerbating the situation. Currently, 13 billion people, or 40% of the world's population, lack access to basic hand washing facilities in their homes. This is depriving them of the most basic and effective prevention measures against the virus during the current pandemic, which is frequent hand washing. Even before the COVID-19 outbreak, almost 2 million people were dying every year from water, sanitation, and hygiene-related diseases. This translates to almost 5,500 deaths every day. Globally, at least 2 billion people use unsafe drinking water, and 4.2 billion lack safely managed sanitation services. These factors present a constant source of stress and disease, particularly the vulnerable and marginalized population groups, including women and girls. And climate change is a worsening situation, with the impacts being felt everywhere. Indeed, 90% of global disasters are water-related. 40% of the world's people are affected by water scarcity, and increased flood cost lives of too many people. Just last week, Cyclone Amphan, one of the strongest storms recorded in the Indian Ocean in decades, hit India's eastern coast and neighboring Bangladesh. It left thousands homeless and dozens dead, as authorities raced to provide relief in communities already stricken by the coronavirus. The current pandemic, spreading against the backdrop of low rates of SDG 6 implementation, is a clear wake-up call to change the way for doing business. Access to water and sanitation is fundamental for health, dignity, and prosperity in every person's life. The 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development provides us with the necessary guidelines for integrated action. Improved water and sanitation management, SDG 6, combined with climate change mitigation and adaptation strategies that SDG 30 are key to build back better and create more sustainable, resilient, and inclusive societies. Multilateral cooperation is essential to harness the benefits of sharing data, information, and best practices in implementing effective and integrated national, regional, and international strategies. The United Nations system, through our global network of regional and country offices, will support all governments and stakeholders to ensure we emerge stronger and accelerate progress towards achieving SDGs. The SDG 6 Global Acceleration Framework, developed by UN Water, provides a collective pathway to address water and sanitation challenges over the next 10 years. The United Nations Department of Economic and Social Affairs, UNDESA, together with UN Water members and partners, including governments, civil society, and the private sector, will work to optimize financing for water and sanitation, build trust through data generation and exchange for decision making and accountability, focus on human capacity to deliver SDG 6, leverage and scale up innovative practices and technologies, and make SDG 6 everyone's business through cross-sector and transboundary collaboration. Clear roles, stakeholder involvement, and effective institutions. The COVID-19 stimulus funds will contribute to supporting this process and rebuilding better, accelerating implementation of the 2030 Agenda. Let us work together to ensure sustainable recovery through accelerated and concerted actions to address water, sanitation, and climate changes. We will move closer towards sustainable development and stability for all. I thank you for your attention.
Thank you so much, Liu. Thank you so much for being with us and your encouraging words across the full agenda. Also encouraging us all around the world to work together at all scales, levels, and through all interests, being them vested or new. Thanks so much for the support you give moving towards the different events we have in line. The high-level event in 2021, the Dushanbe conference the year after, and then in 2023, the UN Water Conference. We really cherish the partnership we have with you and want to thank you for that and for being with us and with your encouraging remarks. You also, again, look, all other speakers, make sure that the ambition is not low. That we understand it The gaps we have to achieve are massive, but that the pathway towards that is possible. And for that, I would like to give the floor to the last panelist, Jerome Deli-Priscoli, Chair of the Global Water Partnership Technical Committee, and also member of the high-level experts and leaders panel on water and disasters. Jerome, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Chair. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you loud and clear.
Okay, good. Thank you. Honorable ministers and all, thank you for your invitation to the high-level panel, Water and Disasters. We'll be brief. There's 3 areas that I would like to report on coming from the high-level panel, Water Disasters. First of all, as you may know, it's chaired by Dr. Han, former Prime Minister of South Korea. The first area is that the panel is continuing its basic principle, which is prevention and anticipation, and that disaster risk reduction must be integrated with sustainable development. I mean, in short, when we look at various countries and the damages as a percentage of GDP over time going down, we understand a lot about the relationship between socioeconomic development and these investments in disaster risk reduction. The second area, to give you a flavor of some of the current activities of the HELP panel, they've produced 2 books, one on floods and droughts with 14 case studies from our members, and the second one is on droughts, and this has got, I believe, 12 case studies in it. In addition, there's a yearly report coming from the high-level panel on disasters with in-depth discussions of a few case studies, for example, recently the Nigerian and Indian floods. I'd also mention that earlier this year, the high-level panel sponsored a water and culture symposium in Tokyo. Among the participants were the Emperor and Empress of Japan. And the idea here is to promote the dialogue of water and cultural heritage at the various global summits coming up. Also, a recent book or a short book on the principles for financing investment in disaster risk reduction has been produced, in a first case study using these principles in Nepal has begun. The third area I'd like to provide a little bit of information is, of course, in COVID-19 and the activities involved here. The centerpiece of this for the high-level panel has been its recent production of 10 principles. These principles have been developed by the members and advisors and partners worldwide. A part of the rationale, or some of the rationale for that, is that the threats of water-related disasters are as imminent now as before we had this COVID disaster. But competition and complications among disaster risk reduction emergency responses and COVID health care responses could magnify negative impacts in some countries and cities. The principles are to offer practical advice to political leaders and to managers of both disaster risk reduction and COVID-19. The principles, and I'll mention these briefly to you. First, enhance the leaders' awareness on disaster risk reduction in the pandemics. Second, integrate the risk management of disasters and the pandemic management of risks. Third, provide clean water, sanitation, and hygiene sustainable during and after the disasters. 4, protect disaster risk management stakeholders from the threat of COVID-19. 5, protect scarce medical resources from disaster impacts. 6, protect disaster evacuees from the threat of COVID-19. Protect COVID-19 patients from the threat of disasters. 8, develop specialized evacuation guidance for cities and areas under COVID-19 and the lockdowns. 9, finance disaster risk reduction actions under COVID-19 effectively to avoid economic catastrophe. And 10, strengthen global solidarity and international cooperation to cope with these co-occurring challenges towards building back better. In addition, these principles will be uploaded to the website of the high-level panel, water-related disasters, in several languages. Following this, the high-level panel will be sponsoring online conferences a online conference in August to address disaster risk reduction under COVID-19, be a web-based conference to share experiences worldwide. In addition, there's going to be some web-based communications of the high-level panel on COVID-19, and specifically, they will be starting a training course on implementing these particular principles. There'll be a virtual side event on all of this at the July meeting in New York in 2020, which will on sustainable development and 2030 agenda. And the training workshop will be started in about a month. Finally, to conclude, I would say the observation of looking at this relationship of the COVID disaster and disaster risk reduction, it's very clear that many of the most vulnerable areas in the world are also areas that contain the most vulnerable people for these kinds of pandemic disasters. And it's really clear that we should be thinking about both of them. And the last thing we need is to have disasters occur at the same time and same places as other kinds of pandemics, and we are unprepared to deal with both of them, and we're not cooperating. We need to build that cooperation. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you so much. Jerome, can you mute?
Yes.
Thank you so much, Jerome, and thanks so much for your contribution from the high-level panel. The framework principles you put in place over the years under the leadership of Dr. Hahn and the many distinguished members of the panel, but also now in the context of this pandemic on what to do next. Good to hear that you're moving forward fast as a panel. And now, and this is only because of time, since we are running late, but we do have the opportunity to run a bit late, which I was asked to actually accommodate as a chair. I would go to interventions from the floor. Before I would like to ask the panelists to think about not a final intervention in the sense of minutes, but 2 or 3 words that you want to give to the world based on your position and experience in the context of this pandemic and in the way how we move forward with sustainable water and climate action. I have a list of interventions from the floor, and I would really ask the representatives from the different countries as well as from NGOs and others to limit their interventions not to minutes but almost to seconds. And this is because we only have a half an hour left, and I really want to make sure that I can at least give you all the floor to say something, though. So please, if I give you the floor, stick to the time. Otherwise, as a chair, I will have to be a little less modest, but try to limit your time of speaking. Okay, here we go. The first speaker is the permanent representative, the Ambassador of Afghanistan, Mrs. Adela Ras. Mrs. Adela Ras, are you with us?
With my apology, Mr. Chairman, Adela Raz is not available at the moment. I am Ambassador DPR of Afghanistan, and I will have a brief intervention with your permission.
Okay, but please brief. Yeah.
Very brief. Let me would like to thanks to organizers for organizing this very important meeting on time. I'm not going to read my 3-page statements, but I will be just focusing on 4 points. Which are very important, I think, not only for Afghanistan, for all member countries. Access to the relevant technology is the key, and also the water management, which access to the relevant technology is the key part in the water management. Also, access to the water of everyone and everywhere. So that is the key. The 4th point, Mr. Chairman, will be the resources availability and also the partnership. So these are the key points. We would like to raise it, and we would like to bring to the kind attention of the participants. With that, I will stop it here, as I promised.
Thank you so much, DPR from Afghanistan. Your points are clear: partnerships, resources, WASH, water management, and technology. A critical statement. And thanks so much for your participation. Then I go to the permanent representative of Slovenia, Her Excellency Ambassador Mrs. Darja Bavdus-Kuret. Mrs. Kuret, are you with us?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Let me thank first the organizer. It's once again proven that, of course, the issue of water is a strategic issue, and that water is the strategic asset of 21st century, and at the same time, one of the main global risks and challenges. Let me say that Slovenia is going to chair the will have a EU presidency in second half of 21st, and we are going to dedicate one of priorities to water. But here I would like to say something that I think is very, very important, that we remind ourselves that the right of drinking water and the right of sanitation is declared as a human right 10 years ago. And that in this attempt today, we have to find a to make a good synergy between the decade of action, implementation of Agenda 2020, good synergy with the targets and goals of water decade and climate action. All these three elements, they have to be in place if we want to achieve better results. And let me also say that in Recover Better, we have an opportunity to shape our economies to be circular, to be green, to be just, and to be safe and more resilient. And Slovenia is one of the leading countries in that. And let me conclude by saying, in order to implement the human right for the drinking water and safe sanitation, we need to use modern technology. We need to have good governance and excellent water management. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Ambassador. And it's great to hear about Slovenia's ambitions in the context of the coming presidency to the EU in regards to water. We, of course, from the Netherlands definitely applaud that and will support you in that effort. And thank you. Next in line is the Ambassador from Brazil, His Excellency, Mr. Ronaldo Costa Filho. Mr. Ronaldo, the floor is yours, but also please keep it brief. We have limited time for all the interventions. Thank you so much for your consideration.
Thank you very much. I'll try to be very brief. Thanking the organizers, UNDESA and UN Water, for jointly organizing this meeting, which highlights the interlinkages between water and sustainable development as one of the objectives of the 2018-2028 Water Action Decade. These interlinkages are more evident today as we all face the pandemic. Some of the worst hit parts of our country are also states with the worst access to sanitation services. And this makes recovery even more challenging, putting additional burden on vulnerable populations. Now, in the past, dealing with the situation has been very slow because fiscal constraints put limits on the government's ability to increase investments in a very capital-intensive endeavor. Business as usual methods we have seen have not worked and will not lead us to achieving the SDG 6 targets by 2030. This is why we have been working on a new regulatory model for sanitation services, which aims to open up the market by creating incentives for private capital. Public resources will not be enough, and we have been using this to try and engage a broader set of stakeholders. These new rules have already been approved by the lower house of Congress and currently in consideration by the Senate. Our Brazilian National Development Bank has also been playing a part, by leveraging blended finance for new investment and providing technical expertise and support to states and cities that want to bring the private sector on board. Our expectation is that with the right incentives, we will be able to overcome the historical lack of investment, thereby enhancing access to sanitation services. Finally, we welcome the Water Action Decade as a space for all stakeholders to exchange experiences and challenges and find ways to cooperate for the benefit of our populations. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ambassador, for your contribution, but also for the commitment to the decade and water action and to the points you brought forward. We really welcome you in this, of course, and thanks so much for being with us. Next intervention comes from the permanent representative, the ambassador for the Kyrgyz Republic, Her Excellency Ms. Mugul Moldaiseva. Mrs. Mugul, are you with us?
Hello, can you hear me? Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, I'm also would like to, I'm very sorry, but unfortunately Ms. Moldaiseva had urgent
Sound is very bad. You have a lot of noise in the background, so...
1 second. Hello, right now, is it better?
Yes.
Oh, thank you very much.
Be brief.
So, yes, I will be very brief. Please. One second, please. I'm very sorry. There's a technical problem. Sorry. Yes, I will be very brief. We would like to say that the Kyrgyz party always remains open for discussions on the whole complex of all water and energy issues. And we believe that the ongoing work will allow the Kyrgyz side to deal with more effectively with coronavirus by expanding access to drinking water and sanitation, as well as its socioeconomic consequences through the development of the energy sector and the economy. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much from the Kyrgyz Republic and your commitments. And please mute. Yeah. Next is Ambassador, His Excellency Ibragimov from Uzbekistan. Mr. Ambassador, are you with us?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair, for this opportunity to speak. And I would like, first of all, to congratulate all co-organizers of this meeting for convening this very important meeting. Today, I would like briefly to bring to your attention one of the serious ecological catastrophes of our time that has direct impact on water and climate change issues, namely the drying up of the Aral Sea. UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres, who visited the Aral Sea in 2017, described its desiccation as one of the world's biggest man-made environmental disaster. Currently, the lack of clean drinking water, sanitation creates serious problems for the local population. The Aral Sea problem has also exacerbated climatic conditions in the region, increasing dryness and heat in the summer and extending periods of cold in winter. According to scientific forecasts, by 2035-2050, the air temperature in the region could increase by another 1.53 degrees on Celsius relative to current indicators. And I want to just, in a couple of words, say what kind of steps the government of Uzbekistan has been taking in addressing those issues. In cooperation with the United Nations, we have established a human security trust fund for the Aral Sea region, and recently we also designated the Aral Sea region as a zone of ecological innovation technology, because technologies, as our ambassador, good friend from Singapore, mentioned earlier, are crucial in finding innovative solutions toward the management and climate issues. And finally, Uzbekistan hopes that the establishment of the above-mentioned trust fund, along with the designation of the Aral Sea as a zone of ecological innovation technology, would help for international community, for donor countries, to look anew to this problem and take concerted effort in addressing it. Thank you for this opportunity to speak.
Thank you very much, Ambassador from Uzbekistan, Mr. Bakijor Timov, for your partnership and also raising again the challenges around the RLC and focusing on how to as part of water security for so many people in your country and region. And for your commitments to water and climate across next, the ambassador is Excellency from Australia, Ambassador Mitchell Fifield. I hope you're with us. The floor is yours. Please keep it brief as well.
Thanks, Chair and colleagues. The COVID pandemic, I think, has highlighted the need to meet SDG 6 like perhaps nothing else. Just a couple of quick points. Infrastructure and financing are important to achieve the goals, but they can't do it alone. We need sound water policy and good governance. For our part, just a few examples of the work we're doing. We've got a flagship WASH program, Water for Women, reaching out to the most marginalised. Also, over 200,000 people in rural Cambodia and Vietnam now have their own household toilet, thanks to a great partnership with IDE and Thrive. And around 30,000 families in eastern Indonesia have constructed or purchased toilets themselves through our partnership with Plan Indonesia. So partnerships are important. And I'll just conclude with this, that Australia has experience to share as the world's driest inhabited continent. We experience climate extremes with multi-year droughts, often followed by flooding rains. So we've got experience. We're here to help.
Thank you so much, Ambassador. And we know, and thanks also for the partnership Australia brought to the high-level panel on water and the partnership across these extremes with floods, droughts, and wildfires you were experiencing. You bring your knowledge and capacity to the world. And those international partnerships are critically important next to the policy, the governance in place, and of course, infrastructure and financing, as you highlighted. Thank you for your commitment to water and climate action. Next is France, the DPR from France, Ms. Anne Gugen. Ms. Anne, are you with us?
Hi, everyone. Our Deputy Permanent Representative, Mrs. Anne Guegen, sends her apologies. She's unable to attend due to a technical issue, but we would like to express our warm thanks to all the organizers of this high-level meeting, which occurs at a very crucial time in the context of the pandemic. As mentioned before, water is life, and the link between water and health is very clear. All the UN resolutions concerning health contain provisions on water, including the resolution on global health and foreign policy, and WASH services are an integral part of the efforts to achieve universal health coverage. I would like to reaffirm that France is fully committed in the water and sanitation sectors. In February, France has adopted a new international strategy for water and sanitation, which reaffirms our commitment to the achievement of the 2030 agenda, and in particular SDG 6. I also would like to mention that France will be a partner of Senegal for the organization of the 9th World Water Forum, which will take place in Dakar in March 2021. Achieving the SDGs has never been more difficult and more necessary than today. And the postponement of most of the meetings on water, sanitation, and climate, which were to be held in 2020, in no way diminishes the urgency of neither the situation nor our ambition to take up these challenges. The SDG Accelerator Framework from UN Water, which will be presented in July, and the high-level meeting to promote the implementation of the water-related goals and targets of the 2030 agenda that will take place in New York in 2021 will be very important steps towards our ambition for 2026. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. And thank you for stepping in for France, DPR. Thanks also for your partnership. Bill, we stand on your shoulders when it comes to the Paris Agreement, your commitment to the World Water Forum in Senegal, but also the 2021 and beyond activities to catalyze the needed change. Thanks so much. Next is Zambia, the DPR from Zambia, Christine Kalambina. Are you with us, Ms. Christine?
Yes, please. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you very loud and clear.
Thank you very much. I wish to thank the conveners for this very important high-level meeting. I also recognize the ministers present. And with a limited time, let me just point out that addressing the issue of water and sanitation in the face of the pandemic and making progress to achieve SDG number 6 is very critical. 2 points we need to note: water resources, infrastructure, and integrated water management systems remain critical and need further support. Also ensuring that we address the gender dimension to improve access, especially that women and girls are more disproportionately impacted. With Zambia increasing cases of COVID-19, the country has been faced with reduced economic activities, further affecting implementation of major water programs and also diminishing capacity for constrained citizens to pay for safe water supply services. So this is a major threat for us. And we therefore need to call for increased ODA to LDCs and strengthening financing and partnership to this sector, as is already alluded to. And finally, the need to strengthen international cooperation and response to human development efforts, including addressing cross-cutting gender aspects. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Ms. Christine Kalamina. And I think the 2 dimensions you brought forward, resource management infrastructure in an integrated way, and the gender aspect of women and girls are critically important. We should never forget all these different parts of moving sustainability inclusively forward. And the last on your ODA, of course, we see this now challenged across the world with a decrease in GDPs. And there's this complex link between GDP and ODA that makes the most vulnerable suffer more, while they should actually be the last resource to do budget cuts upon. So the weakest link is our collective link that we should take care of first and foremost. So thanks so much for making that point. Next is Ambassador Mohammed Koba from the Republic of Indonesia. Mr. Ambassador, are you with us?
Yes, hello, can you hear me? Yes, my name is Rio. I'm speaking on behalf of Ambassador Koba because he has another appointment. So I will be brief.
Yes.
Yes. Just thanks a lot for the missions, UNDESA and Rainwater for hosting this important event. We take note that with COVID-19, we're facing supply disruptions and inadequate access to clean water that hinders access to clean hand washing facilities as one of the most important COVID-19 prevention measures. In this regard, Indonesia definitely will fully commit to work together with all partners and stakeholders. And as mentioned, we also appreciate cooperation with Australia. And we look forward also reconvening the high-level international conference on the International Decade for Action in Tajikistan. Just want to bring attention and questions considering water infrastructures in which many countries are using resources for the pandemic recovery. So how can we best mobilize resources and partnership for water in the recovery and post-pandemic era? Thank you.
Thanks so much for your comments, but also for your question. Indonesia, in the context of water, a necessary and great partner, but also a place where the challenges are big. I move to the European Union and the Deputy Permanent Rep, Mr. Silvio Gonzato. Mr. Silvio, are you with us?
Yes, thank you, and I hope you can hear me.
I can hear you perfectly clear.
Thank you and the organizers and the panelists for this interesting event and for highlighting how the different SDGs are interconnected, the interconnection between SDG 6 and SDG 5, for example, but also SDG 11 on sustainable cities. My intervention is to highlight how in the EU we are committed to look at the nexus between climate and water in a comprehensive way, and we'll do so in our upcoming new adaptation strategy later this year. We've also integrated water-related issues in our biodiversity strategy, which we presented just this week. For example, the target to restore to their natural state 25,000 kilometers of free-flowing rivers by 2030 will help retaining freshwater and retaining groundwater levels. And also the stronger requirements on water extractions that we have put in this strategy will contribute again to the quality of groundwater and preserving our drinking water stocks. We also adopted this week a new food system strategy called From Farm to Fork, and there the increase of land used for organic agriculture will result in the reduction of antimicrobials, pesticides, and overuse of fertilizers, which are all good for water quality and keeping the cost of drinking water production down. And then, as you know, the European Union and its member states, including the Netherlands, have launched this Team Europe package in support of partner countries and helping them responding to the COVID crisis. And there, WASH is a clear priority. There are some examples of what we can do, but more needs to be done clearly, and the implementation of SDG 6 is still very much lagging behind. So we very much look forward to UN Water preparing the SDG 6 Global Acceleration Framework, which should serve as a model for other parts of the 2030 agenda as well. And we also look forward to the 2021 high-level PGA meeting, which will be a good occasion to look at these pathways and make urgently needed progress on SDG, which is truly essential for our lives, and prepare the ground for the 2023 UN Water Conference. So rest assured about our commitment to this particular issue. Thank you, Hank.
Thanks so much, Silvio, and thanks so much also for talking about the commitment the European Union makes for our own territory, and also the biodiversity strategy that came out this week with such an emphasis on water, critically important. Also great to hear about the new adaptation strategy that's coming up. Critically important also in the context of the Global Commission on Adaptation's Climate Adaptation Summit in Amsterdam next year and across the world. And of course, the work of the EU around the world in partnership in combating this pandemic, but also moving sustainable action forward. Thanks so much. Next is the Deputy PR from Switzerland, Mr. Favre. Mr. Favre, are you with us? And if you are, please keep it brief. If not, then I go to India, the first secretary, Mr. Siddharth
Sorry,
Malik.
I just had trouble with the mute system. Sorry for that. I'm Dominic. Yeah. Nice to see you again, Henk, and thank you very much for the organization. As we have been witnessing across the world for the past few months, weak water and sanitation systems aggravate the COVID-19 crisis, which in turn imposes extraordinary pressures on already stretched water and sanitation systems. With this in mind, Switzerland endorsed the recent call to action for water and sanitation, joining its voice to that of dozens of countries, international organizations, and development partners. The COVID-19 pandemic doesn't know any borders and has had implication on nearly every aspect of the 2030 agenda. Climate change similarly affects many sectors and is by nature transboundary and global. So is water. But times of crisis can also be a source of new opportunities. Digitalization can help integrate organizational silos by promoting a systemic approach that recognizes the interdependence of water between different sectors. The potential of digitalization has been highlighted in recent reports, including those of the UN High-Level Panel on Digital Cooperation and the Interagency Task Force on Financing for Development. It will also be addressed at the forthcoming UN World Data Forum, which will be hosted by the government of Switzerland. We need to urgently get full knowledge about groundwater and aquifers. Information systems for water management should not only be based on hydrometeorological data, but they should also combine all necessary social, economical, and environmental data across continents in order to improve modeling and forecasting systems. Thank you very much, Henk.
Thanks so much, Dominique. Thanks so much for your partnership in moving the water agenda forward across the world. We find great strength in that, and we really look forward to work with you towards, of course, the events, but definitely the actions on the ground. Then I go to India. First Secretary Siddharth Malik. Are you with us, Mr. Siddharth?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Thank you.
Thank you for giving me the floor. We also thank the organizers for hosting today's high-level event. We believe that access to safe water can not only protect and save lives, but has the potential for unlocking access to education, economic prosperity, and improved health system. As the global population grows, there is an increasing need to balance all competing commercial demands on water resources so that communities have enough for their needs. In particular, women and girls must have access to clean water, private sanitation facilities to manage menstruation and maternity in dignity and safety. In India, with a view to comprehensively address all water-related issues, we have launched a US $50 billion water mission, which aims to provide drinking water to all households by 2024. On the sanitation front in 2014, we launched the Clean India mission with the aim to make India open defecation free. The world's biggest sanitation campaign saw the building of over $110 million in just 5 years. Going forward, we believe that increasing temperature due to climate change and more variable rainfalls are expected to reduce crop yields in many tropical developing countries where food security is already a problem. Hence, we believe that an integrated view on water, biosphere, and environmental flows is required to devise sustainable agriculture and economic systems that will allow us to de-accelerate climate change, protect us from extreme environments, and adapt to the unavoidable at the same time. To conclude, I want to say that it is said that water is an elixir. Let us protect and sustain this elixir. I thank you.
Thank you so much, Siddharth, for the comment and putting water as the elixir for sustainable development. An integrated approach, matching water, biospheres, and the environment with the social and economic systems is critically important. And as you said rightly, the huge efforts by India to move this towards water security for all, water and sanitation and hygiene security for all, is something we can be inspired by, but that is also something that we need to bring to a broader audience. The UK, United Kingdom, Tom Woodruff, the ECOSOC ambassador, but also the deputy PR from the permanent representative of the United Kingdom. Tom, are you with us?
I am. Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Super. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I will be brief. Good morning to everybody. And of course, thank you to you, moderator, and the various missions involved in hosting this event. And of course, all the panelists as well for such a thought-provoking and interesting discussion. And I think as we've heard from so many of them this morning, without urgent action, the COVID-19 pandemic risks pushing the world even further off course to achieving the SDGs on water and sanitation. But it also, of course, demonstrates how vital clean water and sanitation are in preventing the transmission of viruses and diseases. And so with that in mind, many of our country programs, our Department for International Development's country programs, have prioritized water and hygiene in response to COVID-19, and with water and sanitation in health facilities, high density urban settings and refugee camps being a particular focus. And we've also supported UNICEF's work in the water, sanitation and hygiene sectors and provided $62 million to Unilever to support their global hand washing campaign, which is so critical and which will help fund the distribution of over 20 million hygiene products around the world. But looking beyond COVID-19, we need to ensure that sustainable and resilient water access is central to our post-COVID recovery plans, and that national, regional and global recovery plans prioritize water, sanitation and hygiene services and the systems that keep services running. And so I had a question to the panelists. I suspect we don't have time, but my question would have been, how can we all work together to make that a reality and make that happen? And then also, of course, beyond COVID-19, climate change and biodiversity loss will continue to hamper our collective efforts to provide safe and clean water to millions of people. And again, I think as we've heard from many of the speakers today, the long-term risks from climate to water infrastructure, as well as food and health systems, are well known. And that is why building adaptation and resilience to the impacts of climate change will, of course, be central to the UK's COP26 presidency. And we will also be looking at how we can harness the power and benefits of nature to secure our futures, including through pioneering sustainable supply chains and measures to protect our rivers and oceans. And we don't have time today, but I would, of course, welcome suggestions in due course from panelists and any other colleagues who have joined the meeting today on how we can ensure that there is a proper focus on these issues at COP26 in Glasgow next year. Thank you very much.
Thanks so much, Tom. And you can definitely count on the Netherlands, not speaking as a chair of this, but in my role as a special envoy for international water affairs, that we already working closely with you and your colleagues to move the water agenda in the climate agenda towards next year's COP26. And thank you also for that partnership there, moving the climate agenda, but also across the world. Second, to your question, which indeed might not have enough attention for, but we'll see how far we can get, is that this is critically important. The recovery is too often focused in, of course, building back the economy, ensuring that there's jobs and security, and focusing on intervention that can provide that, skipping over the sustainable actions that come from the 2030 agenda, and that should actually inform sustainable action forward. So it's on us as partners in the world to make sure that we put that front and center. And within the European Union, but also in the partnership with the UK, I'm pretty sure that SDG lens in putting our money where that understanding is going to help us drive this forward. Thanks so much for raising this. Then I go to Mr. Dmitry Chumakov, the DPR from the Russia Federation. Mr. Dmitry, are you with us? And if you are, please keep it brief.
Yes, I'm with you. Do you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Thank you very
for
much.
joining.
Protocol observed, no information about our national programs, although we have a lot of them. In terms of linkages to climate change, more attention should be dedicated to specific adaptation initiatives tailored to country and regional contexts. Efficient use of hydroelectric power plants can present opportunities to lower greenhouse gas emissions, contributing to mitigation as well. When it comes to water cooperation, the opportunities offered by the Convention on the protection and use of transboundary watercourses and international lakes are unique, can be used as a basis for agreements between countries when they feel the need to build water cooperation across the borders. Now the Convention is a global instrument, and we encourage countries, the non-parties, to explore it. And we, of course, reiterate our support to Water Action Decade and the work of Tajikistan. Thank you for organizing this event. Yes, we would love to have more time to be more detailed presentation and speeches, but it is what it is. And we think that the main linkage with water is sustainable development. We support other speakers in highlighting this linkage. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dimitri, for your concise points and raising this to the agenda. I think what comes across is that knowing that we have a high-level event coming up in 2021 and the second UN Water Conference in 2023, coming from the assessment of member states and UN organizations, as well as partners around us, is that there's a platform for discussion, but also the collaboration for action around SDG 6 and all other water-related SDGs is critically important. Since we lack, we organize ourselves in these ways, in these debates, but I really have a strong belief that coming from the two panels of this afternoon and your all your strong commitments and what you want to put in place, and the need for stronger collaboration in the context of this pandemic and climate challenges and regional cooperation will help us take next steps there. So thanks so much for your encouraging words, Dimitri, there. I go to Hans Almosechner, Deputy Permanent Rep from Austria. Hans, are you with us? And if you are, please
Yes.
keep it brief. Yeah, I can hear you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you for giving me the floor. I would also like to thank the organizers for hosting this timely discussion, as well as for providing the opportunity to intervene. Thank you very much. At the outset, let me assure you that Austria is fully committed to achieving our internationally agreed water-related goals and targets. This, of course, implies strong action on a domestic as well as on the regional and global level. Austria is proud to provide all citizens with access to water and sanitation in excellent quality and appropriate quantity. The government's program includes an integrated water strategy, which aims at maintaining our high national standards, while at the same time supporting environmental protection and the implementation of our ambitious climate goals. Turning to the regional level, we believe the issue of sharing water is of critical importance. A total of 276 of the world's river basins, containing almost 60% of the global freshwater resource, are shared water bodies. Almost 3 billion people in 145 countries live in transboundary basins. Austria is no exception, as we are a landlocked country located in the most international river basin worldwide, the Danube, which is shared by 19 countries. Austria is also part of the Rhine and Elbe international river basins. For each of these river basin districts, a river protection commission based on the principles of the UNECE Water Convention is in place. Austria has very good experience in international cooperation on water within those river basin commissions. Last year, for instance, Austria organized a conference on water and climate change in Vienna with international contributions, which highlighted the key role of water in climate change adaptation. Currently, the third cycle of river basin management planning on national and international level is ongoing. River basin management plans are core instruments to protect water resources, among others for WASH activities, and thus contributes to achieving SDG 6. We encourage all countries, which have not done so yet, to ratify the UNECE Water Convention on the protection and use of transboundary water courses and international lakes. Finally, let me say a few words about Austria's international development cooperation. Water has been a priority in the Austrian development cooperation, with several activities in the water and sanitation sector. The spread of COVID-19 made it clear once again what disastrous effects the lack of access to water and sanitation can have. Knowing that access to water, sanitation, and hygiene is a key determinant of health and a key pillar in preventing and combating any disease transmission, like COVID, Austria recently made its single largest contribution to date of 1.6 million euros to UNICEF to support the COVID-19 response in Syria and aid the WASH initiative in Idlib. Water is indeed a matter of life and death for people and the planet. Let's join our forces to achieve SDG 6 so that everyone can enjoy safe drinking water and sanitation, while at the same time protecting our climate and our environment. I thank you very much.
Thanks so much, Hans. Thanks so much for your commitments and indeed the collaboration within the basins of the Danube and the Rhine, but also sharing that expertise of international collaboration across, and your commitments to the water decade and the 2030 agenda, and helping us move forward with water security. Thanks so much. Next is Pakistan, Mr. Mohammed Irman Khan. Are you with us, Mr. Mohammed? And if you are, please take the floor and be brief.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Thank you, Mohammed.
So thank you for the presentations, and thank you for giving me the floors. All protocols observed. I will try to be very brief. So we understand that water is a vital natural resource and an integral part of our environment and climate system, and at the core of sustainable development. Water is pivotal for poverty eradication and economic growth. We understand that it is not only for our survival, but also for essentials for good health and well-being of humans and also our planet, including biodiversity and sustainable ecosystem services. In our context, we have agriculture as our mainstay in the economy, and Pakistan attaches great importance to the water-related issues and consider water to be the core of 3 dimensions of sustainable development. As a low riparian state, Pakistan is acutely vulnerable to water-related calamities. Our vulnerabilities have intensified due to the prevalent water stress situation in our region. For example, of the 10 major humanitarian disasters that have struck Pakistan, 8 were climate-induced and related to water. So I would be brief and to tell that in order to strengthen our legal framework for addressing both climate change and water related issues, I have 3 specific suggestions. 1, strict observance of bilateral treaties and international law in the sharing and management of international rivers and waterways, and expeditious resolution of any dispute or differences. Second, environmental principles like precaution, polluter pays, and no harm should be observed in maintaining our freshwater resources, including transboundary rivers and lakes. 3, due consideration should be given to transboundary effects of water-related disasters, and priority should be according to exchange of information and joint management of transboundary water resources, including rivers and lakes.
Thanks. And it's critically important to look beyond borders, not only to get to agreements and collaborations, but stick to the promises we make, and to ensure in that these promises, like we did with the 2030 agenda, that all aspects of life are integrated: environmental, social, cultural, and economic. Next is Mr. Ahmed Aymas from Egypt. Mr. Ahmed, are you with us?
Yes, indeed.
Please keep it brief. The floor is yours.
I'll try to be very brief. First of all, let me thank the conveners for this important timely meeting. My delegation is really appreciating the informative interventions by the ministers and also by the briefers. And let me, as I took the floor just after Pakistan, I fully inscribe myself to the intervention of Pakistan, and it was very important on the idea of international law and treaties when it comes to transboundary water management. Egypt believes that COVID-19 imposed an extraordinary pressure to already stretched water and sanitation system. That's why the President of Egypt joined the Sanitation and Water for All call for action entitled Water, Sanitation and Hygiene Call on COVID-19. The call for action aims to highlight the importance of access to water in the midst of the current crisis, as there is necessity to make water, sanitation and hygiene available for everyone. We need to work collaboratively with all stakeholders to ensure that water and sanitation systems are resilient and sustainable. Of course, the cardinal point in order to achieve this remains the success to mobilize finance. The importance of water and its correlation with the climate change and COVID grows even more important as we are in launching of the decade of action for SDGs and our pursuit to fulfill SDG 6. In the same vein, we need to acknowledge the correlation between climate change and water-related disasters, especially in Africa, where we noticed that water-related disasters are not only floods, but also water scarcity events as droughts, and with its serious implications on everyone. I thank you, and thank you for giving me that.
Thank you very much. Egypt and the dependency on water is, of course, in every country critically important, but of course you face that aspect in Egypt well with a increasing population and a clear dependency on the Nile and the Nile River basin, and with all the challenges. The Netherlands has a long and strong partnership with Egypt and Nile River basin countries to help you ensure there. Thank you for that and raising your points. Then I go to the Minister Councillor Arman Isetov from Kazakhstan. Mr. Arman, are you with us? And if you are, the floor is yours, and please keep it brief.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll be very brief. Mr. Chair, dear colleagues, Kazakhstan commends the efforts of hosting delegations for organizing this timely event. The issues of clean water and sanitation are very relevant for Kazakhstan with limited and vulnerable water resources and the dependence on transborder flows. This is because almost 45% of its flow comes from neighboring countries. Kazakhstan is also negatively impacted by the Aral Sea. To tackle these issues and to increase the access of the population and economic entities to water, a number of measures are being implemented. These include low taxation of water facilities, subsidies to services for drinking water, application of the principles of price ceiling, and others. Groundwater exploration is also being undertaken to discover the potential of its use for the provision of quality drinking water to rural communities. In this way, Kazakhstan sees further development of regional and international cooperation in transboundary water management, introduction of advanced technologies for groundwater exploration and extraction, and rising public awareness on the rational use of water as the possible way forward. I thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Representative for Kazakhstan, for raising, Minister Council for Kazakhstan, for raising this point in awareness, and also for your partnership in the SDG 6 2030 agenda. Then I'm through with the list with a representative of member states who asked the floor. I have two individuals that asked the floor too. And for them also goes, please keep it very brief, because I want to hand it back to the members of the panel that are still with us before I can close this session. From Nixie Engineers, Lalit Pagara, are you with us? Okay.
Can you hear me? Can you hear me, please?
Yes,
this is Lalit.
I can hear you. Yeah, Lalit.
Okay.
Please keep it brief.
Thank you, first of all, for organizing an exciting event. And I would just like to point out that the world is not running out. The real challenge is to provide enough clean water to the rapidly growing global population. So our focus has to be wastewater recycle and reuse, so that we preserve clean water as much as possible. And in that context, we are working very much in building very small wastewater units and providing it to the community. That is the only note I would like to add. We have many other products as well, but it is not a right time to talk about that. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Lalit. Thank you for raising the point of taking care of the way how we use water. It's not a finite, but an infinite resource if we use it in a circular approach. If we reduce our use and if we reuse the water we use, there is a co-benefit for people and nature in everything. Last, Thomas Sancho from the World Federation of Engineers. Thomas, are you with us?
Yes.
Yes, Thomas, I can hear you, and please keep it also brief. Thomas, try it again. Okay, I don't hear you, Thomas. It is. It doesn't. Thomas, yeah, the floor is yours, please.
Yes, can you hear me now?
Yes, I can. Please keep it brief, Thomas.
Thank you so much. Yes, very brief. Thank you so much and congratulations for this magnificent event. I only want to remark engineering as an accelerator leading interdisciplinary teams, not only in the building and management of water infrastructures, but also in water planning and management and improve water use efficiency, and also introducing technification and intelligence in the systems. And also remark that in the World Federation of Engineering Organizations and in the World Council of Civil Engineers, we are sharing experiences and capacity building through the several regions and countries. Thank you so much and congratulations.
Thanks very much, Thomas, for keeping it brief. These were the interventions listed. Of course, this is not the end of the water discussion nor the water debate, but I would like to ask who from my panel is still there? I know Gilbert had to leave, but perhaps Petri, Maimouna, Shamila, Martin, Peter, or Jerome. Is any one of you still here? And if you are, what I would like to do is a final round based on what you heard, and really be as brief as the last presenters, because I know you can talk to this as I can forever. There's no end to talking and acting on water. So I'm pretty sure, but this is not the last time we will organize this and do this. But please keep it really brief by touching upon what you heard and what you bring from this conversation forward in the work you're already doing. Now just go from the top of the list. Gilbert left. Petri?
Yeah, Petri is gone, but has asked me to speak on his behalf. Hank, this is Johannes in WMO.
Yeah, very good to see you. Yeah.
Thanks, Hank. Thanks, everybody, for all those many good comments that show how complex the water situation is. And this is probably why we are where we are today. But with this new UN Water acceleration framework and really the action coalition that is gathering now around those 10 initial partners that Petri has talked about, I think we have a really good opportunity to really start doing things. So COVID has shown us the impacts of different small things are big, but if we look at the whole development, it's become very clear to me and to WMO community, we really need to shift the gear now, finally, from talking about how we can do things differently to just starting it. And I think this coalition is the opportunity to start. So I am happy that so many people have brought aspects that we can pick up in this coalition, and probably Shamila, who is here for Unesco and will speak now, can also say a few words in this regard. So thanks a lot to everybody, and have a nice Pentecost wherever you are.
Thanks, Johannes, and also thanks for the commitment from WMO and the focus on water in the context of accelerating the work and starting to get things done. Then I go back to UN Water. Is there anyone else, knowing that Gilbert left, who wants to represent UN Water with a final remark? I want to make sure that I accommodate my panel members.
Want me to say, can I say something, Hank?
Yes, of course you can, Leanne.
Thank you. Thank you very much. So I would...
No, Shamila, wait. Yes, you can. But one moment before I go to UNESCO. Since Gilbert left, I asked his colleagues from UN Water if there is somebody still there. Then I go to UN Habitat. Knowing that Maimouna left, is there anyone from UN Habitat who wants to take the floor for a final round?
I'm still here.
Maimouna, you're still here.
Yeah,
The floor is yours, Maimouna. Yeah.
Thank you very much. From you that I would like to point is that we really need to have and coordinated manner when we talk about water and sanitation, because 17 SDG actually is very interrelated and interconnected. because access to basic amenities and water sanitation is a basic human right. So we need to very clearly, and it's also stated clearly in our strategic plan of UN. Second point, global solidarity and unity and cooperation. So from developed countries to least developed countries, and also in terms of finance and investment partnership from the private sector, public sector, and also the UN entities with the human, and it's very important this time that is global solidarity and unity and also cooperation. Third is in terms of the technology. It's very, very important. It's many, there is not a problem of water even in many countries. When it's heavy rain, the places are flooded. But when it's a dry season, it's no water. So I think that innovation and technology is very important because water will affect health and food production. So this is very important. And the last but not least is that the COVID-19 show us the example of integrated planning in the informal and also the vulnerable between rural and urban linkage. So we need to build better, and more equitable if we want to equitable, because if we have water to drink, how can we have water to wash our hands during COVID-19? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Maimuna. Thank you. And yes.
This is Leanne from
I'll give you the floor.
UN Water
I'll give you the floor.
Advisory Unit. Just very quickly, thank you so much for your excellent moderation. We were very happy to support this event, and we hope that people will be able to join the special event during the high-level political forum, where we will launch the SDG 6 Global Acceleration Framework. We're very excited about this, this effort, and we hope everybody will be able to join. Thanks again.
Thanks, Leanne. And thank you again to UN Water. We greatly support you in your work. And the Accelerator Framework really is the mechanism for collective action. And it touches upon Maimuna's point, is that this integrated, coordinated, global effort is critically important. And looking at all the presenters today, the representatives from all member states, UN agencies, and across NGOs, representatives from others that are with us almost until the end. I think this collaborative, coordinated, integrated action, really leaving no one behind, is critically important. And that is something we as from the Netherlands and all with our partnering member states, we want to emphasize again. So thanks both Leanne and Maimuna for bringing those points. Then I go to Shamila. Now you are. The floor is yours. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Henk. And thanks to all of you. I'm going to build on what Maimuna has also said. I think the take-home messages from these sessions and the interventions from the different countries is that there is a need for multi-level governance, and that we need to prompt the water and climate change communities to take really greater focused and concerted collaboration with other water-dependent sectors. And this is really in terms of adaptation across the water domain. Now, the other take-home message is that I would like to present to you the Water and Climate Change document, which was produced by the UN Water Family, the United Nations World Water Development Report, which monitors trends, and actually financed by the government of Italy. Thank you. I think this is really a coming together of UN agencies to monitor trends. Extremely important today for the scientific communities and policymakers across the world. So this World Water Development Report, launched this year with WMO, is an important milestone also this year. And finally, I think based on the mandate and expertise of the UNESCO Water Family, we are committed to accompany the countries in their need to boost the implementation of SDG 6. But I think I would like to put out an appeal and a challenge to all our parties represented here today. We need open science, we need better science, we need access to science and technology as the accelerator in order to accelerate the implementation of the SDGs and to implement really water, climate change, and sanitation. So we really need science as the accelerator and open science. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Shamila. If we don't understand, we don't know what to do. And we need to understand that uncertain future and the interdependencies across are critically important. Thanks. Maarten, are you still with us?
I am, Henk, and wanted to thank everyone for the great responses. It's very grounded, but also with a lot of ambition. And as I mentioned earlier, the X-ray that COVID is providing us of where we stand is not good. People hit are probably not waiting for us to talk here for longer, but they're waiting for us to take action. And if I put that in a slogan, it's something like think global and informed by what's needed at the long term, but act local and relevant to the short term. I second many pleas for multi-level governance and multi-stakeholder action. I think this also requires the private sector. It also requires civil society. It also requires local government and other local actors. And I'd say in the climate agenda, this is also something where it was good to hear, especially the UK also formulating this ambition for Glasgow. The climate action agenda goes way beyond national governments as well. So I think we have an opportunity to build on that and to take the many good ideas from this session in the COVID recovery, but also on the path to Glasgow. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Maarten. Encouraging thoughts, and we have to think global and act local, but through this SDG lens to make sure that acting local does not prevent us to achieving our goals. Thanks so much. Next, Peter, are you still with us, Peter Kovacs?
Yes, of course. I was listening to the very interesting conversation and for the interventions as well. So thanks for the delegations who also highlighted the importance of the transboundary cooperation. The Water Convention has become a global instrument. It's also providing a lot of help to the countries, to the regions. And after the opening, we're also making many publications, not only on the official languages, English, French, and Russian, but also on Arabic and on Spanish. Many publication is available. During my intervention, my colleagues from the Secretariat already uploaded some links to the relevant materials, but I also encouraging countries and experts to visit our webpage because you can find many important issues. And I'm also very proud that although we have only 43 members at this moment, more than 120 countries is participating in our everyday work. So I really want to support all the accession procedures, and also we are offering on my capacity and the Secretariat capacity also if you need any clarification or help on the ground. Thank you very much.
Thanks so much, Peter, for your remarks and this clear call for collaboration across boundaries, vested interest. We have to bridge working together. The convention is an inspirational but also necessary agenda moving forward. Thank you. Jerome, are you still with us?
Still here.
Thank you. The floor is yours.
Oh, very quickly. Three quick
points,
very quickly. Investments in disaster risk reduction is integral, not separate from sustainable development. Anticipate and prevent is the word. Secondly, the link of disaster risk reduction in the pandemic raises the issue of the need for joint risk management and particularly good, accessible public access data and information among all. And third, it's clear the disruptions in water clearly impact the mitigation attempts in any of the pandemics. Thank you very much for letting HELP join, and I really encourage others to join the online dialogues that are going to go on, sponsored by HELP in the principals training. Thank you, Hank.
Thanks so much, Jerome, and thanks so much again for your points and also for the work of the panel on water and disasters. And again, also highlighting the ongoing conversation we have. I was following the chat, and I must say I was already amazed with all the conversations, the Q&As on the chat between the over 300 people joining the conversations today. With this, I don't want to end the conversation on water at all, but I do want to reiterate that we have to not only move from words to action, but we have to continue to focus on words. Understanding the challenges comes by collaboration and participation. Collaboration can only be done in an inclusive way, leaving no one, literally no one behind. No child, no girl, no boy, no vulnerable community, no institution, public or private. And that's it, moving forward. Now with the recovery efforts across the world, with the trillions of dollars, euros, yens, and other currencies we are going to invest in our economies, there is not only the opportunity to do things much better, it is the obligation of countries and private sector, NGOs and others to make sure that we do the right thing, that we really make our world a better place. And this call for action was resonating across. And then we know that water is the enabler. Investing in water ensures better health, protects us from environmental challenges, but also has a clear focus on gender and girls' opportunities and positions. It not only protects economies, but actually helps increase economic opportunities, protects our biodiversity loss and environmental challenges. And in the context of climate, it helps mitigate as well as adapt to climate risks. With that, I'd like to conclude. I want to thank the permanent missions of Canada, Finland, Hungary, Japan, Kenya, of course, the Netherlands, our own, Portugal, Singapore, Tajikistan, and the Department of Economic and Social Affairs, and UN Water for this amazing event, knowing that it is only a first stepping stone. On our way to the high-level political forum in July, on our way to the different international conferences on climate, biodiversity, and so forth. And of course, on our way to the high-level event in 2021 and the UN Water Conference in 2023. I want to thank the ambassador from Tajikistan for being such a great partner in chairing the first part of the high-level panel, and the representatives from Tajikistan, Canada, the Netherlands, Finland, Portugal, Hungary, Japan, Kenya, and Singapore for raising the ambition and to kick us off. With that, I want to close. I want to thank all participants on the chat, listening in and contributing your Q&As, questions and answers. But also do know that we will post the event online, make sure that it is accessible and help continue this conversation in a virtual sense. Stay safe, keep social distancing when possible, take care for each other. This is a time of science and solidarity, as our Secretary General, Mr. Guterres said, and I think embracing science and solidarity is the way forward. Thanks so much. I wish you a water secure world for all.
Thank you. Congratulations, Henk.
Thank you. To stay safe, stay healthy. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you
very much, everyone. Thank you, Hank.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
Very much. Thank
you. Bye.
Thank you, Maimuna. Thank you, Chair. Thank you.
Good, Chair. Bye-bye. Thank you.
Ngabusa din na.